Chapter 1507. Fong he glanced at Yi Chen's room calmly as he thought to this point. What exactly did he do to alarm a god transformation stage old monster? Seeing that Yang Tian was approaching Yi Chen's room, Fong he blocked his way by instinct and said, "Senior, this is my house. May I know what you're here for?" Yang Tian was stunned. He then took a good look at him and said with a smile a moment later, "Lady, have you been in this courtyard all this while?" "That's right." Fong he blushed slightly when he heard the word lady. He then said, "I've been meditating in this courtyard day and night. I rarely leave. May I know why you're asking me this?" Yang Tian said, "Then, did you see anyone barging in?" "It's here." Fong he's eyes flashed, and he said calmly, "Senior, apart from you, I didn't see anyone else come in." Even though she hid it very well, the change in her expression was still caught by Yang Tian. "You're lying." Yang Tian frowned and glared at Fong he coldly. Fong he's heart skipped a beat when he saw that. At the same time, he had an illusion that the person standing before him was not a human, but a terrifying beast. Was this how terrifying a god transformation stage old monster was? Fong he's body trembled slightly. Yang Tian then looked at the room where Yi Chen was. A terrifying divine telekinesis spread out, and his expression changed slightly. "You can block my divine telekinesis?" He could not help but squint as a ferocious gleam flashed through his eyes. "So, you've been hiding here. Have I finally found you?" He walked past Fong he and headed to Yi Chen's room after saying that. Fong he's expression changed when he saw that. He stopped him again and said while clenching his teeth, "Senior, this is my private house. I'm also a member of the Fong family. If you insist on barging in, a member of the Fong family?" Yang Tian's expression changed. "What's your relationship with the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce?" Fong he said immediately, "I'm a member of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce's Fong family branch family." "No wonder you're so fearless." Yang Tian snorted coldly. "However, even if you're a member of the Fong family's main family, so what? Let alone a member of the Fong family's branch family. It's useless to me." With a wave of his sleeve, Fong he suddenly felt an irresistible force coming at him, and his body uncontrollably retreated. Creak! At this moment, the sound of a door opening could be heard. Yi Chen walked out slowly. As he appeared, Yang Tian's tower-like body froze slightly. His pair of ferocious tiger eyes met Yi Chen's calm eyes quietly. The atmosphere instantly froze. Fong he's expression changed drastically the moment he saw Yi Chen. He immediately stepped forward and scolded, "Why are you here? Hurry up and go back." Yang Tian and Yi Chen, who were looking at each other, were stunned when they heard that. Seeing that Yi Chen did not move, Fong he said anxiously again, "What are you waiting for? This is the property my father left me. Since you've moved in, you should be under my protection." Yi Chen looked at Yang Tian and then at her quietly for a few seconds. He said coldly, "You're no match for him. This has nothing to do with you." Fong he suddenly took out a blue jade slip and said while frowning, "If you don't go in, I won't care whether you live or die." Yi Chen looked at Yang Tian in between tears and laughter when he heard that. He then took a few steps back by instinct. Fong he then held the jade slip and turned her head to look at Yang Tian. "Senior, this person is my tenant. If you do anything, I can only crush this jade slip." The jade slip in her hand was given to her by a god transformation stage elder of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce. It was because her father, Fong Lianhai, was acquainted with this god transformation stage elder. It was also because of this person that Fong he managed to keep the property after her father's death. Yang Tian's cold face gradually relaxed. He looked at her with a forced smile. "What's your relationship with this person?" "We're not related." Fong he bit her lip and said. Yang Tian looked at her in surprise and said, "Since you're not related to him, why are you protecting him so much? Do you know that you don't have the ability to stop me? It's easier for me to kill you than killing an ant." Fong he's face turned pale when she heard that. She gripped the jade slip in her hand tightly by instinct and said stubbornly, "Because he's my tenant. I don't want the house that my father left me to be stained with blood. As long as he's still in the courtyard, I'll be responsible for his safety. Moreover, He's only a nascent soul cultivator. I don't know how he offended you, senior. Perhaps there's something. Before she could finish, she felt a thunderous voice in her head. Young lady, how dare you? Boom! At that moment, Fong He felt an explosion in her head. She could barely stand still, as if her body could shatter at any time. That's enough. Yi-Chin could not help but speak and take a few steps forward. You? Fong He panicked. I'm fine. Yi-Chin smiled lightly. There were two balls of golden flames dancing in his eyes. They seemed to have the effect of seducing and hypnotizing. Plop! Fong He only felt an irresistible wave of sleepiness attack him, and then he fell to the ground, and in an instant, the sound of even and powerful breathing could be heard. Yi-Chin placed her gently on the huge rock. He waved his sleeve and sealed the space around the entire courtyard. He then lifted his head to look at Yang Tian. Yang Tian was also looking at him. His throat moved from time to time. If one took a closer look, they would notice that the hands behind his back were trembling slightly. A moment later, Yang Tian walked forward quickly and gave Yi-Chan a tight hug. His hoarse and excited voice was heard. Old Yi. No one could understand his current feelings better than him. 17 years, a whole 17 years. When Yi-Chan left Earth for the ancient desolate realm, he was only 33 years old. 17 years had passed. Although he looked the same as he did 10 years ago, he was already 50 years old. Ordinary people could be considered to have seen the world and experienced honor and disgrace when they lived to the age of 50, let alone cultivators who lived in danger and experienced continuous changes. He had been through too much in the past 17 years. One could say that he was one of the people who missed Yi-Chin the most. However, after close to 10,000 days and nights, he had gone from hope to disappointment to despair. He had gone from immature to experienced and mature. Yi-Chin looked at the man in front of him who had changed a lot. 17 years had changed him too much. However, he still saw the Yang Tian from the past in the latter's burning gaze. Thinking to this point, he could not help but punch the former's chest hard. His eyes were slightly red as he said, "You really make me worry." End of this chapter. Chapter 1508. Old Yi. Yang Tian held his shoulder tightly and stared at him blankly. There were tears in his tiger eyes. "Do you know, I thought I'd never see you again in my life. I'm sorry." Yi-Chin could not help but take a deep breath in. Yang Tian wiped the corner of his eyes. There were countless smiles on his ferocious face. "I thought I was hallucinating when I first saw you. You're not bad." Yi-Chin looked at him with a complicated expression. "You've changed a lot while I was away. This can be considered a training for you." Looking at his former best friend up close, Yi-Chan was in a daze. Yi-Chin looked a little absent-minded. He recalled how the two of them used to sit in the last row of the classroom when they were in university. They would either talk about which girl had big boobs, which girl had a sugar daddy, or talk about going to the internet cafe to play tainted milk powder after school. Yang Tian used to be a hothead. For Yi-Chan, he could fight with the local gangsters at the internet cafe with a fruit knife in his hand. Because of Yi-Chin's words, he could walk thousands of kilometers from the southwest to the northeast. During that period, he made a living by picking up trash. He was even caught and locked up for a few days. However, who would have thought that such a person would grow to such a level? Perfected God transformation stage. In the 17 years that Yi-Chan was away, this guy had advanced from golden core to perfected God transformation stage. Such speed and aptitude could be considered a rare genius in the cultivation world. All right, stop crying. Yi-Chan could not help but smile when he saw that Yang Tian was still secretly wiping his tears. Two men looking at each other affectionately. One of them can't stop crying. If outsiders see this, they'll think that we're comrades. Get lost. Who's your comrade? Yang Tian could not help but scold him while laughing. He then recovered and said, "By the way, why are you here? I remember I came here with a grandson." He saw Yi-Chin's expression turn grim when he mentioned his grandson. He said with his eyes wide open, "Holy SH*T, don't tell me you're that son, that guy. I'll tell you the reason later." Yi-Chin nodded when he met his gaze. He then said while smiling, "Before that, I'll bring you to see someone." At this moment, Waves of shrill cries that sounded like pigs being slaughtered resounded out from a certain room in Sky Origin Inn, and it could be said to cause those who heard it to weep and those who heard it to feel sorrow. Old man, don't hit me anymore. I was wrong. If you continue hitting me, my butt will really blossom. Bastard, what did you call me? Old man? I'm only 50 years old this year. How am I old? Dad, can I call you Dad? Uncle Yi, Godfather, help. Yi Chen sat leisurely. He watched the domestic violence in front of him while sipping the spiritual tea in his cup. At this moment, Yang Hao was like a rabbit whose tail had been burned, scurrying around the room, trying to avoid the whip behind him. However, no matter what he did, the whip would always hit him, as if it had eyes. Enough! After being whipped again, Yang Hao couldn't help but grimace and say, Old man, if you continue, no one will send you off in the future. I'll beat you to death, you bastard. Yang Tian was so angry that he almost whipped him again. Yi Chen put down the teacup and said with a forced smile, Old Yang, your way of educating him is wrong. You hit him too lightly. As the saying goes, the rod makes the filial son. Why not try? Yang Hao's face turned green when he heard that. Although Yang Tian's whip was not fatal, it could hurt his bones and tendons. However, Yi Chen said that he hit him too lightly. Stop fooling me. Yang Tian turned around and glared at him. He said angrily, My son isn't yours. Of course, you won't feel sorry for him. After saying that, he put away the whip in his hand and said to Yang Hao, who was hiding in the corner, Come here. Yang Hao seemed to be really afraid of him. He glanced at Yi Chen and eventually braced himself to walk over. You're already 21 or 22 years old. Logically speaking, I shouldn't hit you. Yang Tian looked at him quietly this time. A trace of heartache that was difficult to capture flashed across his eyes as he said, But do you know why I still hit you? Because I'm disappointing, Yang Hao said in a low voice. Nonsense, of course you're disappointing. Yang Tian scoffed and said, But that's nothing. The reason why I'm so angry is because you didn't visit your mother's grave when I wasn't around. Yang Hao immediately fell silent when he heard this. Yi Chen was stunned and shook his head secretly. Yang Tian said angrily, Your mother got into a car accident while she was pregnant with you. She still protected you before she died. Your mother snatched your life back from the gates of hell. I've been in the Yin ruins all these years and can't get out. Your mother's grave must be lonely. Perhaps the weeds have buried the grave. He sat down heavily and lowered his head as he said dejectedly, In the past, I would go to pay my respects no matter if it was the 1st or the 15th day of the new year. She must be very hungry and cold down there all these years. Yang Hao suddenly knelt down heavily and wiped his tears. His lips trembled as he said, Dad, I was wrong. I didn't have the obligation to pay respects to my son. I deserve to be beaten. Yi Chen eventually sighed softly as he looked at the father and son. He said, Old Yang, you really can't blame Yang Hao for this. Subsequently, he told them about how Yang Hao, Song Chia, and the rest were implanted with 12 shackles and were unable to leave their respective places of defense. What a bunch of Xinyuan 8 clans. After understanding the whole story, Yang Tian laughed from extreme anger. You're bullying me. Just you wait. I'll kill all of you later. He seemed to have thought of something after saying that. He suddenly looked at Yi Chen. Oh yeah, old Yi, you have to help me. As soon as he said that, Yang Hao, Song Chia, and the rest looked at Yi Chen in confusion. Yi Chen smiled lightly when he met their gazes. If I'm not wrong, you want me to snatch the rising dragon pill back, right? Yes. Yang Tian nodded slightly and said, I must obtain this rising dragon pill. I'm not afraid of the Panwu immortal sex Hongya. The only thing I'm afraid of is that the patriarch of Panwu might have left something in his body. When the time comes, I'll alert him. Don't worry, Yi Chen said, while smiling lightly. I knew that you were here for this when we were at the space trade fair earlier. That's why I planted a divine consciousness in Hongya's body. None of his movements can escape my senses. Now that they're still in Tianyuan City, they must know that they have a hot potato and don't dare to leave Tianyuan City easily. I'm afraid they're looking for reinforcements. At this point, he had a spurious smile. Then I'm relieved. Yang Tian heaved a sigh of relief and said, Also, you have to hand over my sister-in-law, Princess Schwanling's corpse to me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1509. A few days after Yi Chun and Yang Tian met, Fang He, who was in the Immortal Energy Inn, woke up from her deep sleep. She could not help but sigh softly as she looked at Yi Chen's empty room. It seems like that senior took this guy away. In the end, you and I are just strangers who met by chance. I have done what I should. I hope you can escape this disaster and be safe. In her opinion, Yi Chen must have offended Yang Tian, a soul formation old monster. Otherwise, how could he have personally alerted a soul formation old monster to come to the Garden Inn? Thinking to this point, she sighed softly and once again sat on the boulder in the courtyard and closed her eyes to meditate. During these few days, if one were to observe carefully, one would definitely discover that there were quite a number of unfamiliar faces within Tianyuan City. Moreover, the gazes and divine senses of quite a number of people were locked onto a single direction. That place was where Hanya and the others from the Panwu Celestial sect were staying. Anyone who had participated in the spatial trade that day would surely be able to guess the reason for such an anomaly. Obviously, someone was coveting the rising void dragon pills in the hands of Hanya and the others. Although the Panwu Celestial sect was also a member of the 5 sanctums of the Yin ruins, there were still many forces that were willing to do anything for the rising dragon pill. Hanya and the others had also expected this, so they wisely chose to stay in Tianyuan City for the time being. After all, Tianyuan City was the territory of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce, which was guarded by a void training stage old monster. No one dared to act recklessly. In a pavilion not far from where Hanya and the rest were staying, Yi Chun and Yang Tian stood side by side as they looked at the palace across them. Old Yi, how much longer do you think this grandson Hanya can endure? Yang Tian frowned slightly and said worriedly, this grandson wouldn't be staying in Tianyuan City and not leaving, right? Or perhaps he wants to refine the rising void dragon pill before leaving. No, Yi Chun said while smiling lightly. This is an outsider's territory after all. The process of breaking through from God transformation to void refinement is very important and dangerous. If you're affected by any external force, all your efforts will go to waste. Hanya is a smart man. He wouldn't dare to do that. You're right. Yang Tian nodded slightly, after which he seemed to have thought of something and asked in a puzzled manner, with your strength, it shouldn't be difficult to capture Hanya. Why didn't you make a move? I can sense 2 extremely obscure divine wills locked onto Hanya. Yi Chen said, if I'm not mistaken, there must be void refinement old monsters secretly investigating Tianyuan City. If I make a move, I'll definitely alarm the 2 of them and cause unnecessary trouble. His top priority right now was to find the 5 luminaries' heaven lotus. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he didn't want to cause any more trouble. No wonder. Yang Tian's expression froze as he said in a deep voice, the Heaven Yuan Chamber of Commerce has a great background. I once heard from the Merman race's ancestor that the Heaven Yuan Chamber of Commerce has a heaven illuminator. Suddenly, Yi Chen chuckled. It moved. At that moment, he sensed a sudden change in the aura of the palace in front of him. Then he saw dozens of figures shoot out from there, and then split into several groups that flew in all directions. What a cunning bastard Hanya. Yang Tian could not help but sneer. He knows how to use this method to confuse everyone and create the most advantageous space for himself to escape. He narrowed his eyes, and demonic flames surged in his eyes. He immediately sensed that, as those groups of people dispersed, many people from various forces chased after them. The auras of the group in the southeast were the strongest. They seemed to be 3 perfected soul formation cultivators. Seeing that, Yang Tian immediately urged, Old Yi, they're running towards the southeast corner. Let's chase after them. No. Yi Chen suddenly smiled and said, that's just a smokescreen. The real Hong isn't among them. Their real location is northwest. He narrowed his eyes and took a step forward. His figure instantly disappeared on the spot. Yang Tian did not hesitate and hurriedly followed. Almost at that instant, in the depths of Tianyuan City, a woman in red frowned. She seemed to have sensed something and said, Third Grandpa, that guy from the Panwu immortal sect, really can't hold it in anymore. An old man with white hair and a youthful face was seated cross-legged in front of him. His pair of turbid eyes were like a vast ocean. Even though the aura on his body was contained and did not leak out, the aura that was vaguely waiting to be unleashed caused the surrounding space to become a little distorted. You know how to set up a diversion. Smart. The old man's gaze pierced through the void, and he said without any surprise, "Unfortunately, it's just a small trick. How can I hide from everyone?" Third Grandpa, are you saying that Hongya has really been targeted by someone? The woman in red was slightly shocked, and then she said, "Then should we make a move? After all, this matter started in Tianyuan City. Don't let the Panwu patriarch come to question us when the time comes." Haha, if he stays in Tianyuan City, we naturally have the obligation to protect him. However, if he leaves Tianyuan City, what does his life or death have to do with Tianyuan City? The old man's expression was extremely calm. Moreover, the Panwu patriarch doesn't have the guts to come to Tianyuan City to question us. The woman in red suddenly said, "That's right, Third Grandpa, who made that rising dragon pill. Why didn't Tianyuan City bid for it?" The old man's calm expression finally showed a slight change. That rising dragon pill must have come from the demon god forest. Even though I can't see through that person's plan, we still can't bid for it. That person from the demon god forest. The woman in red's expression changed slightly when she heard that. Even though Tianyuan City came from the outer region and had a terrifying background, she faintly knew that there were existences in Inshu that Tianyuan City could not afford to offend. For example, the demon god forest and the person in the heavenly tomb. She bit her lips and could not help but ask the old man next to her, "Third Grandpa, who exactly is that person from the demon god forest?" "Don't ask." The old man's expression changed slightly. "He's a taboo that even the headquarter can't see through." The headquarter? The woman in red's heart was pounding. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 1,000 miles away from Tianyuan City, there were mountains and gusts of wind. 5 figures were flying at a low altitude. They were not fast, but they left no traces behind like ghosts. Wherever they went, there were places that no one had been to before. Pop! Crackle! As a series of crisp sounds rang out, one of the old figures suddenly stopped. He looked at the string of beads that had exploded in his hand and said with an unsightly expression, "Young master, Elder Su, Elder Tang, and the others have been caught." Among the figures, an old man's face began to change at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, he turned into a handsome young man. The young man's eyes emitted a cold light, and his lips curled up into a sinister smile. "It seems like our real route has been exposed." The young man was Hongya. As soon as he said that, the surroundings suddenly fell into dead silence. The old man who spoke earlier harumphed coldly. "These guys are really blinded by greed. When the old ancestor comes out of seclusion, our Panwu celestial sect will definitely settle the score with them." "It's useless to say that now." Hongya turned around and looked in the direction of Tianyuan City. His gaze was cold as he said, "Our top priority now is to bring the rising dragon pill back to the sect. After I reach the void training stage." At that moment, a faint laughter suddenly came from the sky. "Hee, Brother Hongya, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you this time." End of this chapter. Chapter 15:10. As the sudden voice faded, the void suddenly distorted a few times. The space suddenly distorted a few times, and then 6 figures descended with the sound of rushing wind. Coincidentally, they blocked the path of Hongya and the others. We saw that the person in the lead was a young man in black. Hongya's pupils violently constricted before he sneered. "So, it's Brother Jiang Li from the Great Jiang Divine Dynasty. How did you discover our tracks?" "Haha." Jiang Li slowly stepped forward and looked at the former with a smile. "Although Brother Hongya's trick is good, it can only deceive ordinary people. So what if you see through it?" Hongya's gaze turned cold, and he said in a frosty voice, "Fifth Brother Jiang, our strengths are equal. Do you think you can stop us with just the 2 of you?" The 2 of them had fought countless times in the Inshu, so they naturally knew each other's methods. "Since I'm here, how can I not consider everything?" Jiangli chuckled, then looked up at the void. Your Highness, since you're here, why don't you show yourself to get the rising dragon pill? As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of laughter suddenly came from the ground. Ha ha ha! I haven't seen you for a few days. Shinzi Zhang's eyesight has improved greatly. After that, under everyone's gazes, a beautiful lady in her 20s gracefully walked over. Her jade-like body was slender, and her red lips were moist. Her jade-like feet stepped on the air as if she was stepping on the surface of a calm lake. Heavenly Jade, holy lady, I didn't expect you to come too. At that moment, Hanya's expression completely darkened. Since when did you two bastards get together? Moreover, there's only one rising dragon pill. Even if you two get it, how are you going to split it? Ha! You don't have to worry about that, Brother Hong. Jiangli chuckled. I've already made an agreement with the Heavenly Jade, Holy Lady, to work together to get the rising dragon pill back. Your plan to sow discord is useless. Boom! In an instant, the temperature suddenly dropped. Hanya's face was filled with coldness. He was so angry that he laughed. Since that's the case, let's see who's the real deal. Attack! Jiang Li's eyes flashed, and he attacked. Wait! At that moment, the Heavenly Jade, Holy Maiden, suddenly said, There's someone else. After saying that, she immediately turned around and looked in a certain direction. She smiled and said in a seductive voice, The one hiding in the dark, are you so cruel to sit by and watch us fight to the death? Her voice was extremely seductive. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of Jiang Li, Hongya, and the others who were about to attack changed because they actually hadn't noticed that there was someone else besides them present here. At that moment, a loud voice came from the forest. F***CK, Old Yi, why did you hit me? I just couldn't hold it in and let out a fart. The Heavenly Jade, Holy Maiden's eyes lit up when she heard those vulgar words. Jiang Li, Hongya, and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. Then, two figures walked out of the forest. The leader was dressed in purple, had a stocky build, and looked very rough. The man behind him was a young man in a green robe. The young man's facial features were as handsome as a god's. Who else could they be but Yang Tian and Yi Chun? Haha, I was wondering who it was. I didn't expect it to be Brother Yang, the son-in-law of the Merman clan. The moment he saw Yang Tian, a smile appeared on Jiang Li's tense face. Brother Yang, why aren't you staying in the Merman clan and enjoying the happiness of having a wife? Why are you here? The one with the surname Jiang, don't be hypocritical with me. Yang Tian did not give him any face at all. With a green foxtail grass in his mouth, he glanced at Hongya from the corner of his eyes. Hong, hand over the void-soaring dragon pill obediently. I'll let you off since I'm in a good mood. Otherwise, the Panwu immortal sect will be destroyed. As soon as he finished speaking, the many elders of the Panwu immortal sect who were protecting Hongya were furious. Bastard! A sinister look flashed across Hongya's eyes as he said with a smile, What a coincidence, Brother Yang. Brother Jiang Li and the Heavenly Jade, Holy Maiden, both have their eyes on the void-soaring dragon pill in my hands. Why don't you discuss it with them? He could tell that Yang Tian and Jiang Li were not on the same side, so he used the same trick again. His motive was self-evident. As expected, as soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Li and the Heavenly Jade, Holy Maiden revealed sinister smiles. What's there to discuss? Yang Tian acted as if he did not hear his provocation. He chuckled and said, I've already said that this void-soaring dragon pill belongs to me. Don't even think about getting it. Brother Yang, how arrogant. Hearing that, Jiang Li smiled faintly and said, The two of you want to get the void-soaring dragon pill for yourselves? Aren't you being too optimistic? Although he said that, he frowned slightly. Although Yang Tian had obtained the inheritance of the Merman clan's ancestral land, his cultivation base was the same as theirs. He was still at great stage soul formation. The former was so arrogant, so he must have something to rely on. His greatest reliance was the Merman clan's patriarch. However, if the Merman clan's patriarch was really here, he would not have waited until now. He would have attacked long ago. More than one person had the same thought as him. In an instant, many people could not help but look at Yi Chun, who was behind Yang Tian. However, To their surprise, they could not see through Yi Chen's cultivation base. Coupled with Yi Chen's young and unfamiliar appearance, they could not figure it out. The heavenly jade, holy maiden, looked at Yi Chen and smiled sweetly. Light swirled in her eyes, and the veil on her body swayed. She looked hazy and charming. "May I know how to address you, little brother?" With that, she took a few steps and approached Yi Chen with extreme lightness. Her skin was like jade, and her fragrance was alluring. Her eyes were like autumn water, and her eyes seemed to be flickering like a fox's. She looked into Yi Chen's eyes with extreme charm. No man would be able to withstand that gaze. Seeing that, Jiang Li subconsciously looked at Hongya and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Charm technique. This is the heavenly charm technique of the heavenly jade holy land. I've lived for so long, but this is the first time I've seen someone as handsome as you. As the heavenly jade holy maiden spoke, a faint smile appeared at the corner of her lips. Even Jiang Li and the rest would fall for her charm if they were not careful. It would be difficult for them to wake up for a while. At that moment, she suddenly saw 2 balls of divine fire jumping in Yi Chen's eyes. They were like divine lamps, resplendent and dazzling, burning everything. At that moment, the heavenly jade holy maiden felt a piercing pain in her eyes, as if they were being burned by fire. She took a few steps back and screamed. Faced with this sudden scene, Jiang Li and the rest were shocked. The heavenly jade holy maiden looked at Yi Chen again. She did not look like she had been able to charm all living beings earlier. All that was left was deep fear. "Who exactly are you?" There were bloodstains in her eyes, and she was crying. The art of charm is just a small trick. Yi Chen glanced at her coldly. Subsequently, he raised his right hand gently and extended it toward Hongya. He said calmly, "Hand over the rising dragon pill." End of this chapter. Chapter 15:11. Hand over the void soaring dragon pill. Yi Chen's voice was neither loud nor soft, but everyone heard every single word he spoke. It was as if it had an irresistible charm. The smile on Hongya's face gradually turned cold. Even Jiang Li was no exception. The 3 of them were the most outstanding people in the 5 sacred grounds. When had they ever seen such an arrogant person? He dared to come and snatch the void soaring dragon pill with just the 2 of them. One arrogant brat. Before Hongya could speak, an elder of the Panwu immortal sect behind him smiled sinisterly. "I'd like to see where you got the guts from." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and turned into a huge hand that pressed down at Yi Chen. The vast pressure caused the surrounding space to tremble. "Old Yi, be careful." Yang Tian, who was standing next to Yi Chen, squinted and said, "This person is one of the Panwu immortal sect's 7 sons. He's already at great god transformation stage. The cold nether energy he cultivates is extremely sinister." Before he could finish speaking, he realized that Yi Chen did not retreat. Instead, he took a step forward at a steady pace. It was this step that caused the elder of the Panwu immortal sect to let out a shrill cry before falling heavily to the ground. He did not move at all, but his eyes were wide open as if he had died with a grievance. Elder Hong Tao. The expressions of Hongya and the rest changed when they saw this. Clearly, they did not expect a great god transformation stage cultivator to die just like that. "How dare you kill a member of the Panwu immortal sect? You're courting death." As a furious voice rang out, another elder of the Panwu immortal sect spat out a giant bronze cauldron. It then turned into the size of a mountain and pressed down on Yi Chen. One of the 3 treasures of the Panwu immortal sect, the Green Dawn Cauldron. Yang Tian's eyes gleamed as if he was reminding Yi Chen. Yi Chen took another step forward. Rumble. In an instant, the huge bronze cauldron that was the size of a mountain exploded and turned into dust. At the same time, the person who attacked fell to the ground and died. Dead silence. The world suddenly fell into dead silence. Everyone looked at Yi Chen in shock. There was only shock and fear in their eyes. He killed 1 person with each step, and they were all great perfection soul formation cultivators at that. F*CK. Old Yi, do you have to be so fierce? Yang Tian was so shocked that his eyeballs almost popped out. Although he knew that Yi Chun was more powerful than him, he did not expect Yi Chun to be so powerful. At that moment, everyone, including the heavenly jade saintess, Jiang Li, and Hanya, widened their eyes. "Who the hell are you?" Hanya swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and his voice trembled slightly. Even as the divine prince of Great Jiang, he couldn't kill a perfected soul formation cultivator in an instant. The only remaining explanation was that Yi Chun was most likely a void refinement old monster who could maintain his youthful looks. Buzz! As soon as this thought appeared, it violently exploded in his mind like a flood bursting through a dam, and it gave rise to dense shock. Void training stage. The heavenly jade, holy maiden, trembled slightly. Such an existence, even in the 5 great sacred lands, would be a top powerhouse. However, they actually encountered one here. Yi Chun smiled calmly and said, "China, mad southern Yi." Boom! As soon as he said that, the world suddenly became extremely violent, as if the sky was about to collapse. "Why your mad southern Yi?" Jiang Li, the divine prince of Great Jiang, was shaken. "Are you the mad southern Yi who has been rumored to have flattened the Taichu dojo alone?" Yi Chun smiled lightly when he met his gaze. Even though he did not give a clear answer, Jiang Li's body trembled violently. Then, he took a deep breath in and bowed to Yi Chun. "I'm Jiang Li, the divine prince of Great Jiang. Greetings, Senior Yi. I don't want this void, soaring dragon pill anymore." "I don't want it either." The heavenly jade saintess followed closely behind. The two of them knew very well that he could even fight against the heavenly lord of Taichu's divine consciousness projection. Killing a perfected soul formation cultivator instantly was nothing. "Very good," Yi Chun said with a smile. Seeing that he had no intention of pursuing the matter, Jiang Li clasped his fists at Yi Chun again. Subsequently, he turned around and flew into the sky with his men. He did not hesitate at all. He was extremely decisive. "Senior, if you have time, please come to the Heavenly Jade Holy Land for a chat." The Heavenly Jade Saintess also chose to leave. After the two of them left, Yi Chun looked at Hanya and the rest who were motionless. He said with a smile, "Do you need me to do it myself?" "Senior, have you ever thought that this will offend the Panwu immortal sect?" Hanya's face twitched. The reason why Jiang Li and the Heavenly Jade Saintess retreated so decisively was because the void soaring dragon pill was not in their hands. However, he was different. In order to obtain the void soaring dragon pill, he had spent 100 million low-grade spirit stones. If he lost the pill, he would not only lose the spirit stones, but also the chance to enter the void refinement stage. "I've already offended the Panwu immortal sect. Why should I mind offending you again?" Yi Chun smiled lightly. Yang Tian said gloatingly, "Did you hear that? If you don't hand over the pill, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave alive today. The Panwu immortal sect will not let this matter rest." Hanya scoffed coldly and flicked his finger. A pill bottle that looked like it was made of suet jade shot at Yi Chun. At the same time, he retreated frantically. "Do you think you can leave?" A hint of mockery flashed through Yi Chun's eyes when he saw that. "Protect the young master." At that moment, the auras of the remaining 3 Panwu immortal sect elders skyrocketed. Then, they attacked Yi Chun fearlessly. "You're like a mantis trying to stop a chariot." Yi Chun's eyes flashed as a terrifying pressure swept out. 3 terrifying bloody mists appeared in the sky. Almost at that moment, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky, and a huge arm rushed out from it. The huge hand did not attack Yi Chun. Instead, it grabbed Hongya and retracted into the rift in the sky. "Break!" Yi Chun was not in a hurry. He extended his hand slowly and clenched it gently at the huge body in the sky. As his palm landed, the huge rift began to close quickly. Faintly, one could only hear a scream coming from within, accompanied by a bloody mist. "Mad Southern Yi, I'll remember this." As the blood mist dissipated, the void had already closed up. However, a furious voice pierced through the void and rang out. Yang Tian said, "Old Yi, is Hongya dead?" "He should be," Yi Chun said while deep in thought. "Even if he's not dead, I'm afraid he's only left with an incomplete soul. It'll take him at least 35 years to recover. That's enough. I'm afraid you don't know that Hongya and the rest all have life-saving techniques. It's extremely difficult to kill them, not to mention that there's a powerhouse saving them. Into this chapter, chapter 15:12. After saying that, he could not help but take a deep look in the direction of the crack. Was the person who attacked just now the patriarch of Panwu? It must be him. Yi Chen frowned and said, "This person is the master of a holy land after all. Why didn't he show up to confront me?" "You don't know, but the patriarch of Panwu seems to be injured." Yang Tian grinned and said, "This old man was injured by Ying. If he didn't run away quickly, he would have lost his life." At that moment, Yi Chen's expression finally changed. "Ying? You've seen Ying?" Ever since he returned from the Purple World, he had lost contact with Ying. He had guessed that Ying had entered the Yin ruins, but he did not expect it to be true. "I've never seen him." Yang Tian shook his head and said, "I was in closed-door cultivation in the ancestral land of the mermaids. I heard about him from the mermaids' patriarch." Yi Chan frowned. "How did he fight the patriarch of Panwu?" "I don't know the details." Yang Tian said, "However, according to the mermaids' patriarch, Ying entered the Yin ruins 2 months ago. He was too overbearing and domineering. He killed his way into the Panwu immortal sect and forced the patriarch of Panwu to show up. After the two fought, the patriarch of Panwu escaped with heavy injuries. At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and grinned. The patriarch of Panwu was chased by him and fled in a sorry state. He did not dare to return to the sect. He only returned to the Panwu immortal sect after hearing that Ying Sha entered the Forbidden Zone." "Ying Sha entered the Forbidden Zone?" Yi Chen's eyes flickered. "That's right." Yang Tian nodded and said, "Someone saw him kill his way from the periphery to the core. He was stained with blood along the way and finally killed his way into the Forbidden Zone. However, you know that the Forbidden Zone is extremely dangerous. Even void refinement old monsters will die there. That's why we lost contact with him." "This guy," Yi Chen mumbled after finally accepting the news. "Why did he kill his way into the Forbidden Zone? What exactly is in the Forbidden Zone? Why are so many people scrambling for it?" Hearing that, Yang Tian said in a deep voice, "I don't know what's in the Forbidden Zone either. However, it said that all the foreign immortal sects came to Earth because of the Forbidden Zone." He took a good look at Yi Chen and lowered his voice. His lips moved slightly. "Rumor has it that there's an immortal's body suppressed in the Forbidden Zone. Whoever can find the immortal's body will have the hope of becoming an immortal." Boom! All the doubts in Yi Chen's mind were cleared up. That's right. Luo Tianyao once said that there was an immortal on Earth who descended to the lower realm. However, he was suppressed by great Emperor Xinyuan later on, and his immortal soul was imprisoned. It seems like the Forbidden Zone must be related to that immortal or great Emperor Xinyuan. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true or not. Yang Tian was afraid that he would overthink it, so he comforted him. "Don't think too much. The Forbidden Land is an ominous place. There were 2 void training stage old monsters who tried to attack the Forbidden Land with the strength of their whole sect, but their souls were destroyed in the end." He was worried that Yi Chen would listen to his rumors and take the risk to enter the Forbidden Zone for the hope of becoming an immortal like the others. However, Yi Chen acted as if he did not hear what he said. His eyes flickered as he thought to himself, "If it's true that an immortal descended to the lower realm, it means that this immortal is from the ancient immortal realm. He's an ancient immortal. When he first ascended to the immortal world from the cultivation world, the immortal world was not called the immortal world back then. Instead, it was called the ancient immortal realm, and the people of the ancient immortal realm were called ancient immortals. At that time, the master of the ancient immortal realm, Immortal Emperor Dao Zhen, was tyrannical. He supported the ancient immortals and looked down on the immortals who ascended from the lower realm, causing the immortal realm to be in turmoil. The ancient immortals and the immortals who ascended from the lower realm had a grudge for a long time, and there were many conflicts. The ancient immortal realm was divided into 4 gates: north, south, south, and west. Each gate had a heavenly king mirror. With this mirror, one could command 1,000,000 heavenly soldiers. Yi-Chun was initially the South Gate Mirror Heavenly King in the ancient heavenly court. He was on equal footing with the other 3 heavenly kings, and his status was only second to immortal Emperor Dao Jun. However, he was hated by immortal Emperor Dao Jun later on. Helpless, he could only choose to resist and successfully instigate the 3 heavenly kings of the ancient immortal realm to rebel. He then unified the ancient immortal realm, established the heavenly court, and imprisoned immortal Emperor Dao Jun in Prison Warden Mountain. If there really was an immortal who descended to Earth in ancient times, then he must be an ancient immortal. However, why did he come to Earth? Yi-Chun had more doubts. Thinking to this point, he could only suppress the doubts in his heart and shake his head slightly. He handed the void, soaring dragon pill in his hand to Yang Tian and said, "When do you plan to consume it? There's no rush for now." Yang Tian shook his head and said, "The desolate god's tomb is about to open. Once I step into the void refinement stage, I won't be able to enter the desolate god's tomb." Why? Yi-Chun was slightly stunned. Subsequently, he seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that the desolate god's tomb only allows cultivators below the void refinement stage to enter? "You're right." Yang Tian nodded and said, "The desolate god's tomb has a very strange restriction. This restriction is extremely repulsive to void refinement stage cultivators. Only soul formation stage cultivators can enter without being affected. What's in the desolate god's tomb that even you can't sit still?" Yi-Chun frowned. "You actually don't know the origin of the desolate god's tomb?" Yang Tian looked at him in surprise and said, "The desolate god's tomb is the tomb of the Great Desolation Elder. Rumor has it that the Great Desolation Elder once killed his way into the Forbidden Area and successfully retreated. Therefore, if you say that there's nothing good in his tomb, I won't believe it even if you beat me to death." Yi-Chun nodded lightly. "I heard that the scholar from the Demon God Forest once killed his way into the Forbidden Area and dyed the Forbidden Area with blood. Why didn't anyone target him?" "Shoo." Hearing this, Yang Tian's expression changed drastically. He looked around nervously for a moment before saying softly, "Sir, do you want to die? That person from the Demon God Forest isn't someone you can casually talk about." He gulped and said again when he met Yi-Chun's surprised gaze, "That person from the Demon God Forest is a taboo in the Yin ruins. Just like the one in the Heavenly Tomb, countless people have tried to target him. There are many void refinement old monsters among them." He swallowed his saliva again and said with an extremely solemn expression, "In the end, all of them died. Don't look down on him just because he's a scholar and looks weak. Usually, scholars are the most ruthless." Interesting. Yi-Chun was interested in Qinqiu Wuhan again when he saw how fearful Yang Tian was. He could not help but recall the first time he met Qinqiu Wuhan in the Demon God Forest. Qinqiu Wuhan even gave him a keepsake. Just as he was deep in thought, Yang Tian suddenly said, "By the way, old Yi, did you buy a piece of the so-called holy medicine fragment at the space trade fair?" Yi-Chun looked at him fixedly. "Why? Do you need it?" That fragment was the map fragment of the 5-element heavenly lotus whereabouts. "That's not what I meant." Yang Tian said, "I think I've seen that fragment before. I mean, if it's useful to you, I can help you." Yi-Chun was moved. "Where else have you seen it?" End of this chapter. Chapter 15-13. In the Silent Void. Yi-Chun squinted at Yang Tian and said in a deep voice, "You said that you saw a fragment of the 5 elements heavenly lotus in the hands of the Merfolk Patriarch?" He was determined to obtain the 5 elements heavenly lotus. Unfortunately, even though he had obtained a fragment from the space trade fair, he was still unable to reveal the whereabouts of the 5 elements heavenly lotus. Unexpectedly, Yang Tian had just told him that the Merfolk Patriarch also had a fragment of the 5 elements heavenly lotus in his hands. "That's right." Meeting his gaze, Yang Tian nodded and said, "Unfortunately, I didn't know what it was back then. I only found out that it was a fragment of a holy artifact at the space trade fair earlier." Yi-Chun said with a faint smile, "Even if it's in the hands of the Merfolk Patriarch, I'm afraid he won't give it up so easily." That might not be the case. Yang Tian chuckled. The merfolk patriarch thinks highly of me. Moreover, the merfolk are ruled by women, and my wife is deeply favored by the old lady. If the old lady intercedes, I'm afraid this matter can be settled. However, you'll have to pay a price. Of course. Yichen nodded and smiled. If it were anyone else, he could have snatched it. However, the merfolk were different from other forces. The former had a relationship with Yang Tian. Yang Tian waved his hand and settled the matter. After the desolate god's tomb ends, come with me to the merfolk. An hour later, in an extremely luxurious and retro courtyard in Tianyuan City. While Yang Tian was combing Yang Hao's body, Yichen looked at Song Chiye and said while frowning, "Is the patriarch not back yet?" "No," Song Chiye said with an unnatural expression. "Master, you know the patriarch's personality. He's always unpredictable. If he's unwilling to return, it'll be as difficult as ascending to heaven to find him." Yichen frowned and could only order, "Wait for the patriarch here. I have something to do. If the patriarch returns, tell him not to run around anymore." With that, he walked out of the courtyard. On Tianyuan City's western city's miscellaneous goods street, numerous densely packed shops occupied both sides of the street. At the end of the street, there was a huge open-air plaza. At this moment, there were countless vendors hawking their wares to each other in a circle. This was the uniqueness of Tianyuan City. Anyone could set up a stall in a designated place in the city as long as they paid a certain amount of entrance tax and land tax. Therefore, it could be said that the business of the entire Inshu gathered here. Yichen walked on the street and glanced at the shops. He would stop in his tracks from time to time and leave while shaking his head. Even now, he was still wondering if he could find anything related to the 5 luminaries' heaven lotus in this huge commercial city, such as the tortoiseshell fragment. Yichen stopped when he arrived at the 8th shop. Then, he lifted his feet and walked in while pondering. At that moment, a middle-aged man quickly walked out and said with an unapproachable attitude, "Fellow Taoist, your treasure house isn't open to the public today. Please come back another day." Yichen glanced at the words treasure house on the shop's plaque. He could vaguely feel a faint pressure lingering in the shop. However, there was a protective layer that could block divine consciousness outside the shop. Thinking to this point, his eyes flickered a few times before he resolutely turned around and walked down the street. "Steward Wu, what happened?" At this moment, a clear and melodious voice that sounded like a silver bell came from the shop. Then, a young woman in a bright and graceful dress walked out of the shop. A faint fragrance wafted through the air. Yichen stopped in his tracks when he heard the voice. He turned around and looked over. Surprise flashed through the depths of his eyes. At the same time, the lady in red seemed to have noticed Yichen as well. A hint of shock appeared on her exquisite face, which subsequently turned into surprise. "Young mistress, this person seems to want to buy something." Steward Wu clasped his fists and pointed at Yichen. He said respectfully, "Considering that young mistress doesn't like to be disturbed, I persuaded her to leave." Before he was done speaking, he saw the young mistress that he was talking about take a few steps forward quickly and walk to the young man. She smiled in surprise. "Senior Yi, I can't believe we meet again." At that moment, Manager Wu's figure instantly stiffened, and he stood on the spot without moving as if he'd heard something unbelievable. Yichen said with a smile when he met the lady's gaze, "Why are you here?" "Young Mistress Fong." The lady in red standing before him at that moment was none other than Fong Ziyue, whom he had met in a martial god tomb previously. Even Yichen did not expect to meet her here. Seemingly sensing Yichen's suspicion, Fong Ziyue pursed her red lips and said while smiling, "Senior Yi, you might not know this, but this treasure house belongs to the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce. I'm currently managing it." She was afraid that Yichen would not believe her as she spoke to this point, so she added, "I usually let Steward Wu take care of it. It's just a routine check today." "I see." Yichen nodded lightly. Fong Ziyue covered her mouth and giggled after taking a good look at Yichen with her beautiful eyes. "It's all thanks to Senior Yi for what happened last time. I haven't had the chance to thank you properly. Why don't you come in?" "Sure." Yichen agreed while smiling. He was reluctant to talk to Fong Ziyue in the beginning. However, since they met again, he could only let nature take its course. "Senior Yi, please." Fong Ziyue lifted her hand and gestured for Yi Chun to enter. Yi Chun walked into the store calmly. Meanwhile, Fong Ziyue turned her head to look at Steward Wu, who was standing still before her. "You can get a nascent formation pill from the contribution hall." Steward Wu was stunned at first when he heard that. Then his body shook intensely. He was over the moon. "Thank you, young mistress." As the name suggested, the nascent formation pill would dissolve the nascent soul and refine the nascent soul's essence into a primordial spirit. When the primordial spirit was formed, it would be the sign of one stepping into God transformation. He had been stuck at perfect stage nascent soul for hundreds of years. He had less than 200 years left in his lifespan. How could he not be excited now that he was given a nascent formation pill? The fragrance of tea filled the air in the treasure closing house. Fong Ziyue, who had changed into a long purple dress with tassels, sat across Yi Chun. She squinted her beautiful eyes lightly. "I wonder, when did you come to Tianyuan City, Senior? Why didn't you come to the city governor's residence to look for me? Did you forget about my kindness 2 days ago?" "I was busy with chores, so I couldn't leave." Yi Chun took a sip of the spiritual tea in the cup. As soon as the tea entered his stomach, it turned into an extremely pure, fire spiritual power that spread through his limbs and bones. He could not help but compliment, "Great tea. If I'm not mistaken, this tea must be expensive. Even God transformation cultivators can't taste it." End of chapter. Chapter 15-14. Senior, you have good taste. Fong Ziyue could not help but lift her sharp chin upon hearing that. This tea is called the Emu Divine Tea. It needs to be cultivated with supreme-grade spirit stones. It can be picked once every 300 years, and each stalk can only yield 5 grams of tea leaves. As she spoke to this point, she covered her mouth and giggled. This tea is very beneficial to cultivators who cultivate fire-type cultivation methods. Senior, you came at the right time. If you came a day or 2 later, I'm afraid I would have given it to my elders. You're generous. Yi Chun nodded lightly and could not help but look at her with a wry smile. "Ms. Fong, you must have something to ask of me since you're treating me so well." Fong Ziyue felt like she had been seen through when she met his gaze. She pursed her red lips and said, "Senior Yi, you're right. I do have something to trouble you with." Yi Chun said nothing. He was drinking the tea in his hand. Upon seeing that, Fong Ziyue clenched her teeth and said, "Senior, have you heard of the Desolate God's Tomb?" Yi Chun said, "I've heard of it, but I'm not interested." Fong Ziyue said in all seriousness, "The Desolate God's Tomb is about to open, and everyone is moving. Even my Tianyuan City is no exception. However, my Tianyuan City situation is different from other forces." She looked at Yi Chun in a daze and said while moving her lips slightly, "My Tianyuan commerce is divided into 5 branches, and I'm from the purple branch. The Desolate God's Tomb is an opportunity for the Tianyuan commerce to change its power. The younger generation of the 5 branches will compete with each other, and the winner will control the Tianyuan commerce." She wanted to see any expression on Yi Chun's face after saying that. However, Yi Chun acted as if he did not hear anything. His eyes were calm. Phew. Eventually, she could only heave a sigh of relief. She knew that her little tricks were like a child's play before Yi Chun. Thinking to this point, she said rather helplessly, "The competition will be for the younger generation of the 5 branches to obtain an item in the Desolate God's Tomb. Whoever gets it will win, and they can ask for external help." Yi Chun looked at her with a wry smile. "So, you're saying that you want me to be your external help to enter the Desolate God's Tomb to obtain what you want?" "That's right." Fong Ziyue nodded lightly. "Of course, I won't ask you to agree to this matter without any conditions. I'm willing to agree to one condition in the name of the Tianyuan Commerce's Purple Branch." "Sure." Yi Chun's eyes flashed. Subsequently, a fragment that looked like a tortoise shell suddenly appeared in his palm. "Have you seen this before?" It was a fragment of the 5 luminaries' heaven lotus. He had already guessed that Fong Ziyue had something to ask of him, which was why she was so enthusiastic. It just so happened that he also wanted to borrow the power of the heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce to find the other fragments. As such, both sides had their own bargaining chips. Fang Ziyue's expression changed the moment she saw Yi Chen's 5-element Heaven Lotus fragment. "Senior, why do you have this?" She seemed to have thought of something after saying that. She looked at Yi Chen suddenly. Could it be that the person who bid for this item at the space trade fair earlier was you, Senior? Yi Chen smiled as a tacit agreement. Then he looked at her and said, "So, you've seen this before?" Fang Ziyue frowned slightly, seemingly hesitating. After a while, she bit her lips and said, "To be honest, the Heavenly Essence Trade Association has this item. Furthermore, we have 3 of them." "Is that true?" Yi Chen's hand that was holding the teacup paused. Subsequently, he said while frowning, "Are you lying to me?" He suspected that Fang Ziyue had said that she had seen the 5 luminaries' Heaven Lotus fragment on purpose to get him to help her. "How would I dare to lie to you, Senior?" Fang Ziyue forced a smile and said, "Indeed, I've seen this item before. I swear on my astral body that it's placed in the heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce's secret treasure. Only the person in charge of the Chamber of Commerce can open it." "The Chamber of Commerce's secret treasure?" Yi Chen frowned. "That's right." Fang Ziyue nodded and said, "The heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce comes from another country. We collect treasures from everywhere. Naturally, we have an extremely secret treasure. However, apart from the person in charge, nobody knows where it is." Yi Chen put the teacup down softly after hearing that and said, "So, who's the person in charge of the heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce?" "It's the patriarch of the Gold Sect." Fang Ziyue took a deep breath in and said slowly, "Even I hardly see him. Rumor has it that he's not on Earth or in Inshu. He's still in another country. However, it's said that he'll come to the gathering where the authority changes this time. Therefore, the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce is currently made up of the 5 sections. We handle all the matters in the Chamber of Commerce." She could not help but sigh softly as she spoke to this point. "However, we don't have the key to the secret treasure, so we can't open it." Yi Chen thought to himself after hearing what she said. He only said to her a moment later while looking at her, "I can be your helper, but how can you guarantee that you'll give me the other 3 fragments? As soon as I have your help, Senior, I believe that I'll definitely be able to suppress the people from the other 4 sects in this competition." Fang Ziyue said in all seriousness, "By then, I'll be the person in charge of the Chamber of Commerce. According to tradition, I'll be the one to keep the key to the secret treasure. I can promise you that." Yi Chen looked at her steadily and eventually said, "You're a smart person. You know the consequences of breaking the contract. By then, the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce alone won't be able to suppress me." "Of course." Fang Ziyue nodded hard. Subsequently, she seemed to have recalled something and said, "May I ask what's your cultivation base now, Senior?" "Perfected God transformation," Yi Chen said. That day before heading to Yinsu, when he was being intimate with Su Yuhan, she seemed to know that she did not have much time left. She forcefully passed all of her pure Yin energy to him. With the help of the pure Yin energy, his cultivation base skyrocketed to perfected God transformation. He was just one step away from void refinement. Even so, cultivators below void refinement were like ants to him. Only void refinement cultivators could fight him. Fang Ziyue's eyes were filled with joy when she heard that. "Senior, it's great that you're only a perfected God transformation. I was worried that you were really on void refinement." The desolate God's tomb was extremely strange. Void refinement cultivators could not enter, or they would be rejected. Only God transformation cultivators could enter. She had seen Yi Chen's combat strength before. He could fight the heaven-battling martial god with his physical body. His combat strength was comparable to void refinement, which was enough to defeat people of the same level. That was the reason why she invited Yi Chen. Since both of them had reached an agreement, Yi Chen went straight to the point. "When will the desolate god's tomb open?" "It'll open tomorrow at noon." Fang Ziyue's red lips curled slightly as she said, "By then, all the organizations will work together to open the formation on the outermost layer. Senior, just go in with me." Yichen nodded lightly. At that moment, Fong Ziyue suddenly said, "Senior, have you heard that there's a huge commotion in Insu today?" Into this chapter. Chapter 15:16. As soon as the voice fell, Fong Ziyue frowned and immediately turned her head to look. Fong Beiyuan, on the other hand, looked delighted. Under their gazes, a brown-robed old man walked over with his hands behind his back. The old man's eyes were sunken in and glowed with light. An extremely cold aura radiated from him, almost freezing the space around him. The moment he saw the old man, Fong Beiyuan immediately laughed out loud and went up to him. "Fellow Tianmo, I've been waiting for you for a long time. How could I dare to trouble the Fong clan to wait for so long?" Taoist Tianmo smiled faintly and bowed to Fong Ziyue. "Greetings, Miss Fong." Fong Ziyue nodded politely and secretly sent a voice transmission to Yichun. "Senior Yi, this person is called Old Man Tianmo. He's also a perfected soul formation cultivator. However, he's known as one of the 10 evildoers in Inshu. He's ranked 4th. 10 evildoers?" Yichen was surprised. As if sensing his confusion, Fong Ziyue immediately explained, "The so-called 10 evildoers are the 10 most powerful rogue cultivators in Inshu. They more or less have many grudges with the 5 sacred grounds, but the 5 sacred grounds can't capture them easily." At this point, her beautiful eyes flickered. For example, Taoist Tianmo. It said that he once took a blow from the heavenly venerable Lord and survived. No wonder he's so arrogant. Yichun chuckled softly. To be able to take a blow from a void refinement old monster without dying and even survive, it could only be said that Taoist Tianmo was not weak. In reality, that was the case. How could anyone who could cultivate to this stage on their own be simple? Fong Beiyuan said with a smile, "Fellow Tianmo, I won't say any more polite words. I've already prepared a birthday banquet for you. There's no need for that." Although Old Man Tianmo said that, he looked at Yichun. There was a hint of coldness on his old face. "I'd like to know what makes you worthy of being hired as Ms. Fong's external help." Shock flashed through Yichun's eyes, who was initially calm when he heard that. This Old Man Tianmo had never met him before, so there was no grudge between them. Ever since he entered the sect, Yichun had never spoken to him. He did not expect Yichun to seek trouble with him now. As Old Man Tianmo's voice fell, the atmosphere in the hall immediately became somewhat subtle and frozen. Fong Ziyue's gaze changed slightly. Before Yichun could speak, she said coldly, "Senior Tianmo, I've witnessed Senior Ye's ability with my own eyes. Therefore, I believe you." "Senior?" Old Man Tianmo could not help but scoff. There was disdain in his eyes as he looked at Yichun. Does this brat deserve to be called senior? Isn't it too childish for Miss Fong to choose this person? At that moment, even Fong Ziyue could tell that the former was targeting Yichun. She frowned slightly and was going to speak. "Ziyu." Fong Beiyuan pretended to cough upon seeing that. He looked at Yichun and turned to speak to Fong Ziyue. "Perhaps there's something extraordinary about this little friend Yi that you value." He changed the topic. "However, the Desolate God's tomb concerns the future of our purple sect. There's no room for anything to go wrong. I think we'll choose fellow Tianmo as our external aid this time." Although Taoist Tianmo did not say anything, he could not hide the smile between his brows. Fong Beiyuan had paid a void-soaring dragon pill to invite him over, so how could he possibly give up on this opportunity? Therefore, Yichun naturally became the target of exclusion. "Father, I'm not joking." Fong Ziyue shook her head in the face of Fong Beiyuan's advice. She insisted, "I still plan to get Senior Yi to be my external aid." Fong Beiyuan's expression gradually turned grim when he saw how insistent she was. He seemed to look rather terrible. Taoist Tianmo was the only one who said while smiling instead of being mad, "Miss Fong, it's not up to you to decide if this little brother could be your Fong family's external aid. Of course, I'm not targeting this little friend on purpose." He glanced at Yichun secretly and said, "Chief Fong has invited me many times. I only agreed because I couldn't reject him. If Miss Fong insists on getting this little friend to be our external aid, I can back out." His moves seemed to be extremely magnanimous, but he was actually advancing by retreating. As expected, Fong Beiyuan's expression suddenly turned extremely fierce after hearing what he said. Ziyue, stop fooling around. Fong Ziyue's face turned slightly pale instantly. She knew her father's character very well. Every time Fong Beiyuan acted like that, it was a sign that he was about to flare up. Seeing her expression, old man Tian Emo secretly scoffed, but he remained calm on the surface, as if he was very calm. At that moment, a calm voice suddenly came from behind Fong Ziyue. Since you said that I'm not qualified, I wonder where you got the qualification from? Yichen took a step forward with his hands behind his back. He looked at Taoist Tian Mo with a forced smile. Qualified? Old man Tian Mo did not expect him to not give up. He said with a cold gaze, just because I'm ranked number 4 among the 10 great villains of Yin Su. Just because I escaped from the heavenly venerable of primordial beginning. Fong Beiyuan could not help but secretly nod as he listened to old man Tian Mo talk about his past, as if he was familiar with it. That was exactly what he saw in Taoist Tian Mo 10 great villains. Yichen smiled and said in disdain, to me, the so-called 10 great villains are just 10 useless people. How dare you brag about them? Bastard. Hearing that, Taoist Tian Mo's expression turned completely cold. Junior, how dare you look down on me? Even Fong Beiyuan looked at Yi Chun in an unfriendly manner. He was the one who invited old man Tian Mo. Was Yi Chun not looking down on him by humiliating him like that? It's not that I'm looking down on you. Yi Chun shook his head lightly and smiled lightly. It's because I've never looked down on you. How can you say that I'm looking down on you? Fong Beiyuan could not help but reprimand. Little friend, please watch your words. If not for the fact that his daughter had invited Yi Chun, he would have ordered someone to chase Yi Chun out. Very well. At that moment, old man Tian Mo laughed dryly. He looked at Yi Chun with a sharp gaze and said, Junior, since you insist on fighting me for the foreign aid slot this time, why don't I compete with you? At this point, his eyes were filled with a cold gleam, as if Yi Chun was a dead man to him. Do you dare or not? Oh, a smile bloomed on Yi Chun's face. He dusted the corner of his clothes and said absent-mindedly, How do you want to compete? It's simple. Old man Timo stared straight at him and said coldly, If you can take one attack from me, I'm willing to back out. Chapter 15-17. Of course, if you die because you're not strong enough to take a single attack from me, don't blame the heavens. He was like a lone wolf that had fainted from hunger. At the end of his sentence, he could hardly hide the killing intent in his eyes. Fong Beiyuan frowned slightly. He could sense that old man Tian Mo was truly furious at that moment. He could not help but look at Yi Chun by instinct as he thought to this point. There was a hint of pity in his eyes. Clearly, he did not think highly of Yi Chun. Little friend, please think about it carefully. If anything happens, my Tianyuan city won't be responsible. Is that so? Yi Chun did not answer his question. In other words, if this old thing accidentally dies in my hands, he deserves it. Fong Beiyuan was speechless. He had good intentions. His goal was to persuade Yi Chun to retreat. Never did he expect Yi Chun to take advantage of the situation. He really thought that he was old man Tian Mo's match. Meanwhile, Yi Chun's persistence made him a little angry. He could only snort and say, Of course, the battle between the two of you is purely a personal grudge. Life and death are up to the heavens. Yi Chun smiled when he heard that. He took a step forward and looked at old man Tian Mo mischievously. Since that's the case, it seems like you'll have to die. The smile on Yi Chun's face gradually turned cold when he heard the last word. The chilling, killing intent seemed to have caused the temperature in the hall to suddenly drop. Under their gazes, old man Tian Mo's pupils constricted violently, and his eyes turned sinister. Very well, very well. I like to see where you get the confidence to talk to me like that today. He glared at Yi Chun fiercely as a cold gleam flashed in his eyes. Subsequently, a terrifying and majestic pressure swept out of his body. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The hall that was reinforced with the formation was on the verge of collapse under the pressure, as if it could not bear the burden. Fong Beiyuan immediately swept his sleeve to protect Fong Ziyue and retreated far away to prevent himself from being affected by the former's pressure. Junior, will you go first, or shall I go first? Although Old Man Tian Mo could not wait to kill Yichen immediately, he pretended to be calm and magnanimous considering that Fong Beiyuan and his daughter were present. You first, Yichen said softly when he met his gaze, because once I attack, you'll never have the chance to attack again in this lifetime. Shameless boasting. Boom! At that moment, a terrifying divine sense erupted from the center of Elder Tian Mo's brows, condensing into a small black sword. As soon as the sword appeared, it immediately shattered the surrounding space. An essence soul treasure. The distant Fong Beiyuan spoke with a solemn gaze. I never expected that fellow Taoist Mo would ever find an essence spirit treasure in advance. Beside him, Fong Ziyue's expression also changed slightly. Primordial spirit treasures could only be used by void-tempering stage old monsters. Primordial spirit treasures alone could destroy everything. On the other hand, Taoist Tian Mo was clearly at the peak of the soul formation stage, but he managed to condense a primordial spirit treasure in advance. From this, it could be seen that it was no wonder that he was ranked among the top 10 villains. Slash! Old Man Tian Mo shouted softly like a thunderclap. Immediately, the small black sword tore through the void and slashed at Yichen. At the same time, his eyes were filled with ferocity. How could he not understand that Yichen must have powerful techniques, since he was so confident? That was why he used a primordial spirit treasure as soon as he attacked. There were less than 5 people in the world who could condense a primordial spirit treasure before entering the void-tempering stage. Senior Yi, be careful. Fong Ziyue reminded him subconsciously. This primordial spirit treasure targets the primordial spirit. If you're not careful, your soul might be destroyed. However, Yichen did not move in the face of such a fierce attack as if he did not see it. If one took a closer look, they would notice a disdainful smirk at the corner of his lips. Is this brat crazy? Fong Beiyuan frowned. Boom! Under their gazes, the small black sword slashed Yichen hard. It seemed to ignore his body and wanted to attack his primordial spirit directly. Gotcha! In that instant, a faintly discernible crisp sound suddenly rang out in the hall. Then, countless dense cracks suddenly appeared on the small black sword, like a broken mirror. How is this possible? The smile on Old Man Tian Mo's face froze. Then, as if he had seen something terrifying, he said, "Why can't my primordial spirit's sword hurt you?" Subsequently, he screamed and spat a mouthful of blood. Clearly, his primordial spirit treasure had been damaged, and it had backfired on his soul. Fong Beiyuan's eyes widened in shock. Is this a primordial spirit treasure? Yichen walked forward step by step. He shook his head and said as he walked toward Old Man Tian Mo, "This is at most a pseudo-primordial spirit treasure. It might be able to deal with others, but not me." Blurg! Old Man Tian Mo spat another mouthful of blood and retreated. He looked at Yichen in shock. Who exactly are you? Even Fong Beiyuan dared not say that he could withstand his attack 100% of the time. However, Yichen was extremely casual. I'm the one who wants your life. Yichen grinned when he met his gaze. His smile turned cold. Now it's my turn to attack. Oh no. At that moment, Old Man Tian Mo suddenly had a strong, ominous premonition. He said without hesitation, "Stop. I'm willing to back out. I'm willing to back out." However, Yichen acted as if he did not hear him. He stretched his hand out at the former. He did not use any divinity or spell. However, it was this action that caused Old Man Tian Mo's hair to stand on end. It was as if he had been targeted by a peerless, ferocious creature. Thinking to this point, he growled and retreated. His first reaction was to leave this place. That was his greatest creed as an independent cultivator. Of the 36 stratagems, running was the best. Almost in the blink of an eye, he crushed a talisman and disappeared from where he was. He entered the void and dashed away at an extremely terrifying speed. Stay here. Yichen remained unmoved. He reached into the void directly, as if he was going to pierce through the Fong family's hall. Break! While old man Tian Mo was shocked, he tried his best to slash Yichen's hand. However, it was useless no matter how many techniques he had. Boom! As the void exploded, Yichen retracted his hand. Fong Beiyuan and the rest saw a terrified person in his hand. Who else could it be but old man Tian Mo? Old man Tian Mo was horrified. He immediately begged for mercy. Fellow, please stop. Let's talk nicely. Chapter 15:18. Blurg. Before he could finish speaking, his entire body exploded into a bloody mist, accompanied by the pungent smell of blood that filled the hall. Dead silence. The hall was dead silent. Fong Beiyuan and his daughter watched the scene with their mouths agape. Old man Tian Mo, who was ranked 4th on the 10 Great Villains leaderboard and had cultivated the primordial soul sword in advance, had died, just like that. It had only been a few breaths since Yi Chan attacked. Even Fong Ziyue, who was prepared, could not help but feel shocked at that moment. She already thought that Yi Chan was powerful enough, but she did not expect him to be so powerful that he could kill old man Tian Mo. Yi Chen's clothes were not stained with blood as he looked at Fong Beiyuan quietly. His smile, that was like a spring breeze, did not seem like he had just killed someone. Chief Fong, I wonder if I can satisfy you? Fong Beiyuan snapped out of his daze when he heard that. He glanced at the scarlet blood on the ground. He then took a deep breath in and bowed to Yi Chun while clasping his fists. Fellow Yi, I failed to recognize you earlier. Please don't blame me. The shock in him was like a flood that had broken the dam. Before this, when had he ever thought that this would be the outcome? Therefore, he could not help but feel ashamed when he recalled his attitude toward Yi Chen earlier. At the same time, he felt lucky. Yi Chen smiled lightly as if he had forgotten about the unpleasantness earlier. We're just taking what we need. It doesn't matter if I blame you or not. When Fong Beiyuan saw his smile, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was usually such people who were the most dangerous. Fellow Yi, please take a seat. He gestured for Yi Chan to sit down as he thought to this point. He then ordered people to serve all sorts of spiritual wine and delicacies. Father, I've already told you. The reason why I asked Senior Yi to be our external help is because I have absolute confidence in his strength. Fong Zhu winked at Fong Beiyuan playfully and smiled slyly. You should believe me now, right? You little girl, you're trying to embarrass me in front of fellow Yi, said Yi Zichen. Fong Beiyuan glanced at her helplessly. He then picked up his wine glass and said to Yi Chun, Fellow Yi, a toast to you to apologize for my rudeness earlier. With that, he drained the cup in one gulp. Yi Chun finished the wine in the cup while smiling. As soon as the wine entered his stomach, it was like a trickle, causing the spiritual power in his body to grow slightly. He couldn't help but say in surprise, Good wine. If this he didn't guess wrongly, this is a precious monkey wine among wines. Moreover, it's a supreme-grade monkey wine brewed by the three-eyed fire ape race. The moment he said that, Fong Ziyue and her father could not help but look at each other. They could see a trace of shock in each other's eyes. In the end, it was Fong Ziyue who said with a smile, Senior Yi is knowledgeable. This is indeed supreme-grade monkey wine. My Heavenly Essence Merchant Association traded with the three-eyed fire ape race in the Outer Realm. We don't have much in store, and my father usually can't bear to drink it himself. Even though we don't have much in reserve, we can still take out some. Fong Beiyuan could not help but laugh. If fellow Taoist Yi needs it, I'll order someone to give you some before I leave. The reason why the father and daughter were shocked was that very few people in the Outer Realm knew about the monkey wine. Yichen accepted it gladly. Subsequently, he seemed to have thought of something and said while smiling, Clan Leader Fong, will I really not bring you any trouble by killing old man Tian Mo? There's some trouble, but it's not a big problem. Fong Beiyuan's expression relaxed slightly as he said, Fellow Yi, you might not know this, but old man Tian Mo actually has an elder brother called Tian Xiezi. He's the leader of the 10 villains, a void refinement old monster. Void refinement? Yi Chun said. That's right. Fong Beiyuan nodded lightly. It said that Tian Xiezi and old man Tian Mo entered a tomb by chance and obtain the inheritance. Tian Xiezi's aptitude is the best, so he entered void refinement before old man Tian Mo. At this point, he said in a deep voice, "Therefore, Tian Xiezi's reputation among the rogue cultivators in Yinshu is extremely high. He has the tendency to be the leader of the rogue cultivators. Even the few on the villain list have to look up to him. It's also because of Tian Xiezi's existence." Feng Ziyue added, "The 5 sacred grounds have a soft policy toward the 10 villains. They won't touch them unless they have no other choice." Yichen's eyes flickered. "I see." Needless to say, Tian Xiezi would find out sooner or later that old man Tianmo had died in his hands. This meant that he, Yi Chun, would have another void refinement old monster as his enemy from now on. However, he did not care much about that. Tian Xiezi was not the only void refinement old monster he had offended. There were also the Taichu Taoist master, the patriarch of Panwu, and the 8 Xinyuan clans in China. Seeing his expression, Feng Beiyuan thought that he was worried about Tian Xiezi's revenge, so he could not help but say, "Fellow Yi, you don't have to worry too much about this. I'll deal with the aftermath of fellow Tian Mo's death. Moreover, Tian Xiezi won't dare to barge into Tianyuan City and make a move." Let's take a step back. He couldn't help but say with a smile, "If fellow Yi helps us seize first place in the desolate god's tomb, my purple faction will take control of the desolate god's tomb, and we will give fellow Yi the identity of a guest elder of my heavenly origin trading company. With this identity, not to mention Tian Xiezi, even the 5 sacred grounds wouldn't dare act rashly." His tone was domineering and confident. That was the foundation of the Tianyuan Trade Association. Yichen said while smiling lightly, "I know what I'm doing." Subsequently, Yichen declined Feng Beiyuan and his daughter's invitation to stay and left the city governor's mansion after the 3 of them chatted about the details of the desolate god's tomb. Feng Beiyuan gradually stopped smiling as he watched Yichen leave. He turned his head to look at Feng Ziyue behind him. "How did you know such a person?" Feng Ziyue immediately told him all the details of the martial god's tomb. After hearing that, Feng Beiyuan could not hide the shock on his face. This person actually defeated the martial god's corpse with his physical strength. "Father, Senior Yi seems to be a dual cultivator of magic and martial arts." Feng Ziyue gritted her teeth. "You have to know that even Elder Ku is no match for the martial god's corpse. This person must be a dual cultivator of magic and martial arts." Feng Beiyuan's eyes shone brightly. Only someone who cultivates both martial Dao and truth cultivation can have such a battle prowess that's comparable to a void refinement old monster. Unfortunately, there's a huge chasm for dual cultivators of magic and martial arts. It's very difficult for them to step into the void refinement stage, and they can only stop at the God transformation stage for the rest of their lives. In a mansion in Tianyuan City, when Yichun entered, he was surprised to find that Song Chiye was the only one in the house. He did not know where the rest of them were. "Master." Song Chiye immediately greeted him when he saw him. His expression did not look too good. Yichun frowned and said, "What happened?" With his experience, he naturally guessed that something must have happened. Otherwise, Yang Tian would not have gone out without listening to him. Song Chiye took a deep breath in and said, "The patriarch got into a conflict with someone at the brothel. The other party has a powerful background, and there are many of them. The patriarch is at a disadvantage, so Uncle Yang brought the people there first." The patriarch fought with someone at the brothel? Yi Chun was a little stunned when he heard that. So the patriarch has been hitting the goose all day long, but he still got pecked by the goose in the end? He did not hesitate anymore. "Let's go. Bring me there. P.S. I was going to update 4 times, but there's not enough time, so I can only update 3 times. I'll update 3 times tomorrow. I'll try my best to restore the update." Chapter 1519. The Immortal Tower was located in the northernmost part of Tianyuan City. It could be said that this was a gold mine. The Immortal Tower was filled with women, and they were female cultivators at that. Their looks were extraordinary, and they were extremely good at seduction, causing many men to fall head over heels for them. On the path of cultivation, not everyone could pursue the path of immortality, and not everyone could survive in the boring and dangerous cultivation world. Therefore, there would always be people who would choose to give up halfway. They would either live in seclusion and become an overlord, establish a cultivation family, marry and have children, nurture their descendants, and try to let their descendants surpass them. Or they would take advantage of their lifespan and enjoy themselves. Women were the #1 poison in the world. Of course, for the women in the brothel, pleasing the customers was also a form of cultivation. Most of them were proficient in the art of harvesting yin to nourish yang. When they had sex with male cultivators, they would silently absorb a portion of their essence energy to increase their own cultivation. Master, they're inside. Song Chia led Yi Chun to an extravagant building according to the message from Yang Tian. Yi Chun lifted his head and saw a huge pavilion in the distance. It seemed like it was sitting on the clouds. It was shrouded in spiritual mist, and from time to time, he could hear seductive laughter and panting. The voice was extremely charming, causing one's face to flush. Any male cultivator who passed by this place would have fallen for this scene if they had the slightest bit of willpower. Even Song Chie could not help but reveal a strange expression, as if he was bewitched by the voice. Fortunately, he had quite the willpower, and it was just his body that was uncomfortable. At this moment, there were people entering and exiting the Immortal Tower. Most of their cultivation bases were below nascent soul, and most of them were at foundation building. However, Yichin was not in a hurry to enter. He stared at the Immortal Tower, and 2 balls of golden flames could be faintly seen in his eyes. Under his pupils, the beautiful Immortal Tower that looked like a paradise on earth no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by endless resentment, energy, evil energy, and other negative energy. Song Chie could not help but ask, "Master, what's wrong? What a great Immortal Tower." Yichin suddenly smiled and said, "It attracts countless people in the name of a brothel. Not only can it harvest yin to nourish yang, but it can also absorb the 7 emotions and 6 desires. It can even dream back to 1,000 lifetimes. There's actually someone here who knows how to set up this eclipse stealing formation. Not simple at all. I'd like to see who the old ancestor has offended." He chuckled and took a step forward, leading Song Chie toward the main entrance of the Immortal Tower. Dozens of young girls were divided into 2 groups and stood on both sides of the main entrance. Their black hair was like a waterfall, their snowy arms were like lotus roots, and their sparkling and translucent bodies were accompanied by their charming laughter, attracting passers-by. Yichin led Song Chie past the pink skeletons calmly. On the contrary, Song Chie's face was flushed red, as if his Tao heart could not hold on. In his eyes, he only felt that there were fairies dancing in front of him and smiling at him. Every frown and smile was extremely charming. One of the women, with half of her clothes torn off, smiled charmingly and said with a magnetic voice, "Little brother, do I look good?" Song Chie's throat moved, and he subconsciously wanted to go over. Suddenly, a shout sounded in his mind. "Be asterisk starred, are you still not waking up?" In an instant, Song Chie stopped in his tracks and revealed a blank expression. Then, he came to his senses and quickly retreated to Yi Chen's side. He looked at the dozens of women in front of him with lingering fear. Even the dozens of women were shocked. They did not expect Yi Chen to be unaffected by such charm. Then a voice sounded, "Little brother, since you've come here, it's fate for us. Why are you so resistant?" A woman with a red mole between her brows walked forward leisurely. Her body was slender as she walked toward Yi Chen gracefully. She extended her slender fingers as if she wanted to touch Yi Chen's face. "Oomph." Yi Chen snorted coldly and turned into a thunderclap that landed in her mind. She spat a mouthful of blood and retreated heavily. Her face was extremely pale. "I don't care how you cultivate, but if you continue to not restrain yourself, don't blame me for destroying your cultivation." Yi Chen's gaze was cold as he walked into the Immortal Tower step by step. With his previous encounter, Song Chie did not dare to look at them anymore. He lowered his head and followed Yi Chen closely. Watching the 2 of them leave, the woman who was severely injured earlier had a cold gaze and said in a low voice, This person must be here for the person who calls himself the Patriarch of Hell. Guard this place. I'll report it right away. As soon as he stepped into the immortal tower, the scene before Yi Chen's eyes suddenly changed. It was as if he had stepped into a paradise. The surrounding pavilions were faintly discernible. The spiritual energy was like mist, and there were countless palace maids flying in the air. The strange thing was that there were no men. It was as if the men who had entered earlier had mysteriously disappeared, including Yang Tian and the rest who had arrived earlier. Song Chia also noticed this abnormal change. His expression changed slightly as he said, "Master, this looks like someone has been waiting for me." Yi Chen's eyes flashed. He spread his divine consciousness out in an attempt to spy on the entire immortal tower. However, he realized that the immortal tower was very big. Even his divine consciousness could not cover it completely. From the outside, this immortal tower is only 1,000 square meters in size, but the inside seems to be boundless. A thought suddenly popped into Yi Chen's mind as he thought to this point. He could not help but sneer. So it's a Sumeru Grotto Heaven treasure. They're trying to lure me into their trap. Song Chia gravely said, "Master, you mean to say that they were acting against the ancestor and that their real target was you? Whether it's true or not, we'll know once we investigate. Follow me closely and remember to guard your Dao heart. Don't have any distracting thoughts. If I'm not wrong, the master behind this immortal tower is extremely proficient in formations and illusions. If we're not careful, we'll be doomed." Yi Chen shook his head lightly and stepped onto the stairs that led to the second floor. As soon as his feet landed on the first staircase, the scene before him changed again. It turned into a peach blossom forest with blooming peach blossoms and a mountain full of red. There was a blue lake in the peach blossom forest. There seemed to be laughter coming from the lake, and the 1,000-year-old trees beside the lake were covered in colorful dresses. There were dozens of young girls bathing naked in the lake, playing with each other in the water. Occasionally, their jade-like bodies would be revealed, causing one's throat to move. Yi Chen was indifferent to that. He continued moving forward. As he approached, the woman in the lake was completely exposed to the two of them. Many women stood up from the water and smiled at Yi Chen gracefully. "Little brother, the water temperature here is excellent. Why don't you come down and bathe with us?" Song Chia looked over subconsciously and almost lost his Dao heart. He suddenly recalled Yi Chen's words and immediately recited the Diamond Sutra to stabilize his Dao heart. Chapter 15:20. "Little brother, can you hand me my clothes? The pink dress on the leftmost peach tree and the red doo-doo. I'll repay you. Little brother, you're so handsome." Waves of blushing voices entered Yi Chen and Song Chia's ears. In the end, Song Chia chose to seal his 6 senses and used a whip to connect himself to Yi Chen. Yi Chen was indifferent and continued moving forward. Whoosh, 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 the seductive voices lingered in their ears. Subsequently, a few young women stood up. They were naked and walked to Yi Chen shyly. There were still some water droplets on their crystalline bodies. The boundless secular world is but a fleeting cloud. Yi Chen's eyes gleamed as his divine telekinesis transformed. It condensed into a golden long sword in the air and charged at the young women. "You've ruined my Dao heart, kill." A woman's face was filled with fear as she was killed on the spot. "If you stand in my way, kill." With another slash of the sword, another naked woman was destroyed. "How dare you show off in front of me with such insignificant skills? Kill." "Ma was like a blade, kill. Kill, kill, kill." In the time of a few breaths, all the charming and seductive women were destroyed, and the voices that caused one's face and ears to flush came to an abrupt end. As the space changed, the scene before Yi Chen returned to the scene of the first floor, leading to the second floor of the immortal tower. Yi Chen's expression was cold. He turned around and glanced at Song Chia, who had sealed his 6 senses. He scolded softly, "Idiot! Cultivation is to cultivate the heart. If the heart escapes, how can there be any cultivation?" Song Chia seemed to have woken up from a dream. He immediately unlocked his 6 senses and faced the temptation head-on. He gradually understood what Yi Chen meant. Yi Chen revealed a look of approval and continued leading him forward. The illusion was useless to him, but it was enough to train his disciples' Tao heart. Deep in the immortal tower, where the void overlapped. At this moment, there were two people in a quiet valley. One of them sat cross-legged and stared at the chess game in front of him without moving for a long time. That person seemed to be a young man, but he had a head of white hair, and there was a mixture of 30% evil and 70% righteousness between his brows. Beside him, there was an extremely beautiful woman standing respectfully. Her appearance was like that of a seductress who had once bewitched an emperor and lost the entire world. Bang, bang, bang. At that moment, black pieces exploded one after another on the chessboard, turning into dust that scattered in all directions. This person has such a strong, killing intent. The white-haired young man stared blankly at the incomplete chessboard, and a look of shock appeared on his face. My methods didn't affect him at all. The peerless beauty by his side was also slightly shocked, and then she said softly, "Down, master, do you want me to act?" "No need." The young man interrupted him with a wave of his hand. This person is obviously someone who is wholeheartedly devoted to the Tao and doesn't have any distracting thoughts. Moreover, based on his killing intent, he's a person who kills decisively. It's useless even if you go there. No wonder Qinxiu Wuhan is interested in him. When he thought up to here, he chuckled. In this way, it seems like my subsequent methods have always been useless. Ling Long, open the heavenly gate and invite this fellow Taoist in. He smiled faintly. The woman named Ling Long could not help but be stunned when she heard that. After so many years, this was the first time her master had opened the heavenly gate and invited someone in. Understood, Ling Long responded. Her body distorted, and she disappeared on the spot. On the 9th floor of the immortal tower, Yi Chun led Song Qiye to the 9th floor step by step. To his surprise, there were no obstructions on the remaining 8 floors after the first illusion. Song Qiye glanced at the sealed wall in front of him, and his heart was in turmoil. "Master, I think we've reached the top." At that moment, he finally realized that someone might have really set up a trap to lure Yi Chun in. Since that was the case, he was not worried about the identities of the Patriarch of Hell and the rest. Yi Chun placed his hands behind his back and suddenly shouted, "Mad Southern Yi from China is here to pay a visit to the master of the immortal tower." Boom, boom, boom. As soon as he said that, the wall in front of everyone slowly opened from the inside. Then, a woman in a silk dress walked out slowly with a lantern in her hand. The moment he saw the woman, Song Qiye could not help but be dazed. He could not be blamed for losing his composure, but the woman was just too beautiful. On the other hand, Yi Chun's eyes flickered. Void refinement stage. The existence in front of him, who looked like a maidservant with a lantern, was actually at void refinement stage. Moreover, she was stronger than Elder Ku beside Feng Ziyue. Ling Long carried the lantern and took a good look at Yi Chun. She said in a natural and unrestrained manner, "Fellow Yi, my master invites you." At the same time, Song Qiye snapped out of his daze. He could not help but feel ashamed and hurriedly shifted his gaze away, not daring to look at Ling Long again. "All right." Yi Chun nodded lightly and walked into the open wall under Ling Long's lead. Only Song Qiye said worriedly, "Master, be careful of a trap." His worry was not unreasonable. The reason why the master behind the immortal tower had set up such a trap to lure Yi Chun here was not as simple as meeting him. "Don't worry." Yi Chun shook his head with his hands behind his back and followed Ling Long closely. From the looks of it, the master of the immortal tower did not have any hostility toward him. All the methods he used were illusions, and he did not have any strong hostility. Of course, even if the other party was hostile, Yi Chun was not afraid at all. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Ling Long led the two of them into a quiet valley. At the entrance of the valley, Ling Long suddenly stopped in her tracks. She glanced at Song Qiye and said to Yi Chun, "Fellow Yi, my master only wants to see you. Please wait here." Hearing that, Song Qiye's expression changed slightly. "Wait for me here," Yi Chun instructed and subsequently stepped into the valley. The valley was very quiet. It was not as quiet as it seemed on the surface, but when one was in it, one's body and mind could not help but calm down. In the end, Yi Chen's gaze landed on a courtyard above the valley. The courtyard was extremely ordinary. It was made of green bricks and green tiles, as if it was a remote place in China. Outside the courtyard, there was a stone pavilion. At that moment, a young man in a Taoist robe was sitting in the stone pavilion. There was no aura on the young man at all. He looked very ordinary. However, Yi Chen could feel that there seemed to be a divine furnace in his body. It was as if it could explode at any time and destroy the world. The young man slowly turned around and looked at him like a spring breeze. His voice was magnetic. "Esteemed guest, you've come from afar. Please forgive me for not welcoming you earlier." After saying that, he immediately made a gesture of invitation. Yi Chen did not mind. He walked forward casually and sat on a stone stool opposite him. There was only a stone table between them. Only then did he look at the former and say, "You've painstakingly lured me here just to meet me?" Chapter 15:21. The man in the pavilion looked to be in his 20s. He was very young, but there seemed to be a hint of frivolity between his brows, making people subconsciously think that he was a playboy. As Yi Chen sat down, the woman who led the way earlier walked into the distance with a lantern in her hand. The lantern in her hand seemed to be extraordinary as it shuttled through the air. Soon, she returned and served Yi Chen a cup of tea. Then, she stood respectfully behind the young man without looking sideways. The young man smiled lightly when he heard what Yi Chen said. "What if I say that the reason why I set up so many tricks is simply to meet you? Fellow Yi, would you believe me? It doesn't matter whether you believe me or not." Yi Chen looked at him and said with a burning gaze, "Fellow, I believe you know why I'm here this time. How's my friend?" He did not check the other party's cultivation base. This was because he could tell from the void refinement woman behind him that this person was probably a top existence in Insu. The only one who could threaten him was probably the existence in the demon god forest that Yang Tian and the entire Insu feared. "Don't worry, fellow. They're safe and sound." The young man nodded and said, "Moreover, with fellow Ye's decisive personality, if I hurt them in the slightest, it'll be difficult for us to reconcile today." With that, he could not help but smile and say, "I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Chu Zhongtian." "So it's fellow Chu." Yi Chen nodded lightly. "The name Chu Zhongtian is too far away." Chu Zhongtian's gaze was filled with vicissitudes, as if he was sighing. "It's so long ago that I can't remember when I mentioned it to anyone. However, that guy from the Demon God Forest called me the Path of Carnal Desires." "Path of Carnal Desires?" Yi Chen's eyes flashed when he heard that. "You're walking the path of carnal desires." There were 3,000 great paths and 800 unorthodox paths in the world of cultivation. Some people became saints by studying, while others became immortals by chopping trees day after day. They all had their own paths and cultivation paths. These great paths were all about staying away from the mortal world, living in seclusion, away from the 7 emotions and 6 desires and the mortal world. However, the path of man desire was the exact opposite of this. The path of man desire focused on getting close to the mortal world, the 7 emotions and 6 desires, especially women. However, the path of desire was too difficult. The slightest carelessness would cause one to be bewitched by external objects. Moreover, it was not tolerated by the world. Thus, after countless years, it was very difficult for a person to achieve great success in the path of desire. It was hard to imagine that the person in front of him, who was dressed in a Taoist robe and looked like a Taoist expert, actually walked the path of human desire. Fellow Taoist, you also know of the Tao of human desires? Chu Zhongtian looked at him in surprise. His eyes flickered a few times. Then he said, "That's right. I walk the path of human desires. To me, if cultivating to become an immortal requires one to have a clear heart and few desires, then I don't mind cultivating to become an immortal. Outsiders say that Mad Southern Yi is a native of Earth and a desolate descendant of the celestial burial planet. However, looking at it now, I beg to differ." At this point, he took a good look at Yi Chen. If I'm not mistaken, fellow, ye has probably been to the spirit realm of the colossal world before, right? Yi Chen's heart skipped a beat, but he looked at him calmly and said, could it be that fellow Chu is from the spirit realm? His words tacitly confirmed the former's guess. Chu Zhongtian smiled faintly, not surprised at all. The woman named Ling Long beside him said indifferently, the sect master guards the spirit realm's human desire realm. He's one of the only 8 tribulation stage almighties in the spirit realm. Tribulation stage. Yi Chen's eyes flashed. I didn't expect fellow Chu to have such a great background. However, it's unbelievable that someone of your status would sit down and talk to me so politely. In the spirit realm, an existence like the tribulation stage was practically the most powerful existence. Even though there was still the Mahayana stage above the tribulation stage, the Mahayana stage was not considered a stage. Instead, it was a transitional stage between immortals and the tribulation stage. In the late stage of the tribulation stage, when everything was ready, one would take the initiative to sense the 9-9 heavenly tribulation. Once one passed the heavenly tribulation, they would advance to the Mahayana stage. This was the feedback of the heavenly Tao. It was similar to giving cultivators time to settle their affairs. After settling their affairs, the Mahayana stage cultivator could release his aura and take the initiative to sense the immortal light. Then, he would step into the immortal world through the immortal bridge. Before this, Yi Chen knew that Chu Zhongtian had a powerful background and was not weak. However, he still did not expect the former to be a tribulation stage almighty in the spirit realm. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind as he thought to this point. A mere earth was able to attract a tribulation stage cultivator. Secondly, since Chu Zhongtian was a tribulation stage almighty, then the one in the demon god forest must be one too. No wonder the entire Yin Su was extremely afraid of the latter. As if sensing his guess, Chu Zhongtian said calmly, fellow Yi, you're right. Qinxiu Wuhan is also from the spirit realm. However, he's a tribulation stage almighty from the wood spirit clan. This person is a demon, but he imitates the human race to study poetry, so he's more reasonable. The one in the heavenly tomb? Yi Chen frowned. The heavenly tomb? Chu Zhongtian's eyes flashed as he said, fearfully, I'm not sure about that person's background, but Qinxiu Wuhan and I rarely interact with him. It's because this person has a strange personality. He can even be said to be eccentric. This person came to the Insu earlier than us. I don't know why he died, but he preserved his divinity, so he could only stay in the heavenly tomb. Right? He seemed to have thought of something and said to Yi Chen with a faint smile, the master of the desolate god's tomb that you're going to attack tomorrow, Old Man Great Desolation, is also a tribulation stage almighty. Even him? This time, Yi Chen was also shocked. That's right. Chu Zhongtian nodded slightly and suddenly sighed. However, this old man was unlucky and completely died in the Yin Su. It's not an exaggeration to say that his soul has been destroyed. It was extremely difficult to cultivate to their level. Even though Old Man Great Desolation did not get along with them when he was alive, it was inevitable that they would feel sad after the former died. Yi Chen was shocked. How did he die? Even a tribulation stage powerhouse had died in the Yin Su. How could he not be vigilant? Even though he had an indestructible body, he had to think for Yang Tian and the rest. You'll have to ask the toad you met in the War Sky Martial God's tomb. Chu Zhongtian smiled mysteriously. Did that person tell you that it has 2 brothers in the Yin Su? Yi Chen said in a deep voice that toad also came from the spirit realm. The first time he met the toad, when Yi Chen wanted to subdue it, the former did say that it had a big brother and a second brother. No. Chu Zhongtian shook his head and said, this toad is a local divine beast of the Yin Su, but it has an extraordinary background. Before it was born, it was in the Yin Su forbidden area and obtained many benefits. It's the right thing to do for you to befriend it. End of this chapter. Chapter 1522. Could it be that the old man of great desolation was killed by the foreign brother that the toad mentioned? Yi Chen was shocked. The native living beings of Yin Su could actually kill a tribulation stage almighty from the spirit realm. How could he not be shocked by such a method. No. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Yi Chen's mind. If Chu Zhongtian and the rest were tribulation stage almighties, how could a mere Yin Su stop them? Yi Chen lifted his head to look at Chu Zhongtian as he thought to this point. He suddenly smiled and said, "Fellow Chu, if I'm not wrong, I'm afraid you can't unleash your tribulation stage cultivation base, right?" The moment that was said, the surroundings fell silent. Ling Long, who was standing behind Chu Zhongtian earlier, suddenly had a change in her aura. Then, endless killing intent erupted as she locked onto Yi Chen. Initially, Yi Chen was just testing her. Unexpectedly, her reaction verified Yi Chen's guess. Yi Chen was not afraid at all in the face of her monstrous killing intent. He remained sitting calmly, as if he was not affected at all. Ling Long stepped back. "Your methods are useless against fellow Yi." Chu Zhongtian smiled faintly. After all, fellow Yi is fellow Netherworld's friend. Back then, fellow Netherworld was famous among the demons in the spirit realm. How could his friend be underestimated? Hearing that, Ling Long immediately dispersed the killing intent on her body and retreated to the side. She regained her gentle temperament from before. Meanwhile, the way Yi Chen looked at Chu Zhongtian was different again. This person was truly extraordinary. He even knew about the patriarch of Netherworld's background. Thinking to this point, he gradually understood that perhaps this was the reason why the other party valued him so much. Chu Zhongtian waved his sleeve and poured a cup of tea for Yi Chen. He said while smiling, "Fellow Yi, you're indeed perceptive. In fact, it's not just me. Even Qinqiu Wuhan can't unleash his tribulation stage cultivation base, including the one in the heavenly tomb and the fallen old man of great desolation." He suddenly sighed softly. "To be honest, we're only at the tribulation stage, but we can only unleash the cultivation base of a perfected void refinement stage. I'm afraid it's because of the Yin Su forbidden area, right?" Yi Chen squinted slightly and smiled wryly. "To be precise, you guys ended up like this because you coveted the immortal soul and immortal body suppressed in Yin Su." As his voice fell, the entire valley fell silent. Chu Zhongtian, who was initially calm and composed, had a slightly cold look in his eyes. He stared at Yi Chen for a few seconds before laughing out loud. "Ha ha ha! Indeed, nothing could be hidden from fellow Yi." His smile seemed to be bitter. "To tell you the truth, 10,000 years ago, the spiritual realm didn't have a passage to the immortal realm, and we couldn't sense the ascension platform either. We could only watch as our lifespans ran out and our 10,000 years of cultivation turned to waste." Yi Chen secretly nodded upon hearing that. 10,000 years ago, it was the era of the ancient celestial realm. The master of the ancient celestial realm, Celestial Emperor Daojin, rejected immortals who ascended from the lower realm, so he didn't set up an ascension platform. Thus, cultivators in the lower realm couldn't sense the ascension platform, so it was difficult for them to ascend to the celestial realm. Only a small number of courageous people were willing to use their 10,000 years of cultivation as a bet to force their way into the space-time turbulence to find the passage to the immortal world. Later on, after Yi Chen went to the ancient immortal realm and re-established the order of the immortal world, he set up the ascension platform to open an opportunity for the lower realm to ascend. Chu Zhongtian did not know what he was thinking and said slowly, "Just when we were in despair, an ancient immortal descended to the lower realm. Moreover, this ancient immortal was injured at that time." Ancient immortal. Yi Chen's eyes flickered when he heard that. It was almost the same as what he had guessed earlier. Many of us tribulation stage cultivators were bewitched by others in an attempt to steal the opportunity to ascend to immortality. We risked our lives to attack this ancient immortal, resulting in a great battle. Chu Zhongtian's expression was solemn. The outcome was that more than half of the tribulation stage cultivators in the spiritual realm died. We survived, while this ancient immortal was injured. He had no choice but to turn to the lower realm to seek refuge. Yi Chen came to a realization, so this ancient immortal came to Earth by chance. "That's right." Chu Zhongtian glanced at him and said in a deep voice, "At that time, we didn't know where the ancient immortal went. However, we were worried that if we gave him a chance to recover, it would be our doomsday. Therefore, we searched for him at all costs. In the end, we found out that he came to Earth. He narrowed his eyes slightly. However, when we came here, we found that an extremely talented expert had been born on Earth. The other party had a great battle with the ancient immortals, and in the end, he suppressed them in the Yin ruins by himself. Yi Chan blurted out, "Great Emperor Xinyuan?" Chu Zhongtian nodded lightly and said in admiration, "This person is too amazing." When we arrived on Earth, he had already left. He fought everywhere on the ancient starry sky path, sweeping through many stars in an attempt to solve the many hidden dangers for the living beings on Earth. So, you guys entered the Yin ruins later on. Yi Chen secretly nodded. You're trying to destroy the sealed ancient immortal completely? While eliminating all future troubles, you're also trying to steal the opportunity to become an immortal. Haha, Chu Zhongtian laughed self-deprecatingly. That was indeed what we were thinking at that time. However, when we approached this immortal soul, something unexpected happened. This immortal soul actually split his demonic psyche and used it to control many of us, causing chaos in our camp and causing us to fight each other. At this point, he seemed to be unwilling to face the past. The strangest thing was that this immortal soul used some kind of immortal technique to cause our cultivation base to plummet. After so many years, we fell from the tribulation stage all the way to the void refinement stage, beating the mortal world technique. Yi Chun thought of this immortal technique almost immediately. He could not help but say, "If that's the case, why don't you guys return to the spirit realm? Instead, you guys continue to stay in this world and get worse?" Unexpectedly, Chu Zhongtian shook his head and said, "We had the same thought back then. However, Great Emperor Xinyuan seemed to have set up some kind of barrier in the Yin ruins. We can only enter but not leave. In addition, there's a Realm Guardian. We can only sit and wait for death." Realm Guardian? Yi Chen was surprised. Chu Zhongtian glanced at him. Great Emperor Xinyuan is suspected to have become a saint. Before he left, he buried his body in the Yin ruins. It's called the Emperor's Tomb, and the existence guarding the Emperor's Tomb is that foreign Realm Guardian. The Realm Guardian is ferocious and likes to eat souls. Anyone who dares to challenge its authority will become its food. He sighed faintly. Back then, fellow Taoist Huang was unwilling to be imprisoned in the Yin ruins, so he charged into the forbidden area to challenge the Realm Guardian without any regard for his life. In the end, his soul was destroyed. He could not help but glance at Yi Chan as he said that, "I believe you've guessed that this Realm Guardian is that Toad's brother." End of this chapter. Chapter 1523. Toad's elder brother is the World Guardian? Yi Chen's calm heart was stirred again when he heard what Chu Zhongtian said. Before this, he knew that the Toad had an extraordinary background, but he didn't expect the Toad to know the Inshu Realm Guardian, who was the guardian of the great Emperor Xuanyuan's tomb. Yi Chen squinted at Chu Zhongtian as he thought to this point. Since that's the case, why did the Inshu Realm Guardian watch you guys survive until now? World Guardians are unable to leave the Forbidden Zone, Chu Zhongtian said patiently. I've said it before, the Realm Protectors shoulder the mission of guarding the Archtomb, and the Archtomb is also in the Forbidden Zone. I see. Yi Chen secretly nodded and said, in other words, most of the danger in the Forbidden Zone comes from the Realm Guardian. As long as you guys don't barge into the Forbidden Zone, everyone will be fine. He couldn't help but gain a new understanding of Great Emperor Xinyuan. Although the ancient immortal had suffered from the backlash of forcefully descending to the lower realm, as well as being besieged by Chu Zhongtian and the others, it was still not something a tribulation passing stage could compare to. However, this great Emperor Xinyuan was able to suppress an ancient immortal all by himself. One had to admit that he was indeed overflowing with talent. Even though he had left Earth, the Insu he left behind imprisoned many tribulation almighty cultivators there. Even the existence guarding his mausoleum caused many big shots in the spiritual realm a headache. You're only right. Chu Zhongtian shook his head. The World Protector is only one of them. In reality, the most dangerous part of the Forbidden Zone is the demonic soil. Demonic soil? Yi Chan frowned. Chu Zhongtian's expression was solemn. Though Emperor Xianyuan managed to trap the ancient immortal in the core of the Forbidden Zone, he was unable to kill him. Therefore, after so many years, the seals that Emperor Xianyuan set up are showing signs of loosening. The immortal soul desperately broke a space barrier leading to the devil realm in Yinshu, causing a large amount of devil qi to invade the forbidden area of Yinshu, demonizing the forbidden area and giving birth to countless ferocious monsters. Yi Qin's pupils constricted slightly as soon as he said that. Are you saying that the immortal soul wants to perish together? He could not afford to be so shocked. He knew the demon realm too well. Once Yinshu was successfully demonized, the demonic aura would definitely spread to Earth. At that time, the entire Earth would be destroyed. It can't be considered a mutual destruction. Chu Zhongtian smiled. After all these years, we have not been living well. The ancient immortal is not much better off. Especially after being sealed by Emperor Xianyuan, he is practically on his last breath. He's worried that some of us will find a way to recover in advance and barge into the forbidden area to kill him. His eyes were cold. Therefore, he broke through the world barrier regardless of everything and led the demonic qi to invade Yinshu. His purpose was to create trouble for us so that he could have a chance to breathe. And now, the forbidden area should be called the demonic earth or the netherworld earth. Not only has the demonic world's qi invaded, but even the netherworld qi of the netherworld has been mixed in. At this point, Chu Zhongtian shook his head slightly. In fact, the immortal soul has achieved its goal. Who would have thought that a mere small kiliacosm on Earth would have existences from the underworld, the devil realm, and the spirit realm gathered together? Yi Qin nodded with a serious expression. Whether it was the devil realm, the spirit realm, or the netherworld, they were all worlds that were second only to the immortal realm. Now, as Chu Zhongtian had said, they had all appeared on Earth, a small kiliacosm that was at the bottom of all worlds. Thinking to this point, he said worriedly, "Fellow Chu, I just want to know how big the broken world barrier is. Have people from the devil realm and the netherworld descended into this world? If people from the devil realm and the netherworld descended, the problem would only get worse. A mere devil general from the devil realm could sweep through everything." It's hard to say. Chu Zhongtian frowned and said, "That broken barrier shouldn't be big. In my opinion, the netherworld and the devil realm haven't discovered it yet. After all, we've been here for countless years, but we haven't seen the existence of these two realms. In reality, the spirit realm, the devil realm, and the netherworld were incompatible with each other. Therefore, as an outsider, he did not wish to encounter people from the two realms on Earth. This was because over countless years, the devil realm and the netherworld had waged war against the spirit realm more than once. Unfortunately, they were repelled by the spirit realm's army and ended in failure. The most typical case was that hundreds of thousands of years ago, the netherworld had attacked the spirit realm under the leadership of the Azure Queen. The spirit realm could not resist at all. At the critical moment, if a true immortal had not descended to the mortal world and fought the Azure Queen, killing her in the end, the spirit realm would not have been able to escape. The current plan is to repair the broken barrier as soon as possible. Yi Chan frowned slightly and said, "Otherwise, the broken barrier will only get bigger and bigger. By then, it will be completely out of control. Fellow Yi, don't worry for now." As if sensing his worry, Chu Zhongtian smiled and said, "Now that the World Guardian is guarding the Yin ruins, the World Guardian naturally won't sit idly by and watch the situation worsen. In reality, the World Guardian has been purging the demonic land for so many years." His gaze turned slightly cold. The real source is the suppressed immortal soul. If he doesn't die, no one will be able to sleep or eat in peace. In reality, he had another worry that he did not tell Yi Chun. Even the few powerhouses of the spirit realm could not guarantee if the suppressed ancient immortal's immortal soul had the ability to communicate with the immortal realm. If the latter could communicate and make the immortal realm take action, it would be the worst. Whether it was the tribulation stage or the Mahayana stage, They were still mortals who were slightly more powerful. How could they be a match for immortals? Before this, we didn't have the slightest plan to deal with it. Chu Zhongtian suddenly smiled and said, "However, after fellow Yi appeared, we saw a glimmer of hope." Yichen narrowed his eyes. Hope? As if sensing his confusion and vigilance, Chu Zhongtian said, "Whether it's me or Qinxiu Wuhan, we're all people from the outer realm. We're not considered natives of Earth. Therefore, the world guardian that guards a demonic land is hostile to us. In that case, we can only stay at the outskirts of the Yin ruins and watch the demonic land grow stronger day by day." He looked at Yi Chun steadily as he said that. "Fellow Yi, you're different. You're a native cultivator of Earth. You're a descendant of great Emperor Xianyuan, so it's easier for you to gain the trust of the World Guardian. You'll be able to open the methods set up by great Emperor Xianyuan and help us recover our cultivation bases. Then, we'll work together to kill the immortal soul. Is that why you used the Patriarch of Hell and the rest as a cover to lure me here?" Yichen smiled and looked at him quietly. He said, "Fellow Chu, how can you be sure that I'll help you? Don't forget that you're from the outer realm after all. As the saying goes, those who are not of our race will have different intentions." "You will." Chu Zhongtian was not angry at all. Instead, he laughed out loud. "Perhaps you don't care about our lives, but you definitely care about Earth and China." End of this chapter. Chapter 1524. He shook his head slightly. Whether it's the demonic soil or the immortal soul, once it erupts, we might be able to protect ourselves temporarily, but the first to bear the brunt will be Earth. He looked at Yi Chun and said with a smile as he spoke to this point, "I believe you don't want to see the entire Earth being devoured by demonic energy and nether energy, and countless humans and living beings being demonized, right?" Yi Chun's eyes flickered slightly when he heard that. Chu Zhongtian was right. He did not want to see the demonic energy demonize the entire Yin ruins and spread to Earth. At the very least, he could not let it affect China. "Even if it's like that, how do you believe that I can help all of you?" He said indifferently, "I've never met the world guardian of the demonic soil. Moreover, the true descendants of great Emperor Xianyuan are actually the 8 Xianyuan clans." 8 Xianyuan clans? Chu Zhongtian chuckled. "Are you referring to the 8 ancient families in China who claim to be the direct descendants of great Emperor Xianyuan?" He changed the topic and seemed to be disdainful. "They're just 8 rotten families that have long been blinded by greed. They can't afford to take this responsibility. The World Guardian will definitely not take a liking to these 8 pieces of trash." At this moment, Ling Long, who had been silent behind him, suddenly said, "Sect Master, don't forget that the World Guardian once said that whoever can obtain the Xianyuan sword's acknowledgement will obtain his permission." "Xianyuan sword?" Yi Chen was surprised. "Is it great Emperor Xuanyuan's weapon?" "That's right." Chu Zhongtian nodded slightly and said, "After great Emperor Xianyuan suppressed the ancient immortals, he forcefully removed the spine of the ancient immortals and refined it into his own weapon. That's the Xianyuan sword." He took a deep breath in, and his expression turned serious. "It said that this Xianyuan sword is already an extreme emperor weapon, only one step away from an immortal weapon, extracting the spine of an immortal to refine a weapon." Yi Chen mumbled when he heard that. Great Emperor Xianyuan is so generous. After great Emperor Xianyuan left this world, he didn't take the Xianyuan sword with him. Chu Zhongtian said. Instead, he left it in the Emperor's tomb. After countless years, we've more or less interacted with the World Guardian. The World Guardian once said that whoever can obtain the Xianyuan sword's acknowledgement will be able to subdue it. What a pity. At this point, he sighed softly. After our cultivation level regressed, we didn't dare to enter the demonic Earth's might. The only person who succeeded was Qinxiu Wuhan. Yi Chun came to a realization. Did Qinxiu Wuhan go in for the Xianyuan sword? Before this, he had heard Taoist Dark North mention that the demon god forest had slaughtered his way into the forbidden zone and had even dyed it with blood. Who would have thought that it was all for the Xianyuan sword? Exactly. Chu Zhongtian nodded and said, even though Qinxiu Wuhan's cultivation has regressed, he still managed to stain the forbidden land with blood. Unfortunately, he couldn't obtain the Xianyuan sword's approval. so he had no choice but to return. The path master of carnal desires had dominated the spiritual world, and there were very few people that he admired. Old man Great Desolation was considered half of that, and the rest was Chinchouan. Ling Long reminded me just now. He seemed to have thought of something, and he shook his head and said, even though the 8 clans of Xianyuan aren't much, they're still the descendants of the great Emperor Xianyuan in the end. In terms of bloodline, it's easier for the Xianyuan sword to acknowledge them as its master. Yichen nodded in agreement. Therefore, instead of placing your hopes on me, you might as well consider the 8 Xianyuan clans. My words aren't absolute. Chu Zhongtian suddenly glanced at him. Compared to the 8 clans of Xianyuan, I admire fellow Yi more. The Xianyuan sword has a spirit and will naturally choose its master. Why would it care so much about bloodline? His gaze was extremely sincere. Among the younger generation of the 8 clans of Xianyuan, no one can compete with fellow Yi apart from that person from the Huangfu family. The Huangfu family? Yichen said. Ling Long explained. The Huangfu family is one of the 8 clans of Xianyuan. The Huangfu patriarch is suspected to be at peak void refinement. Such an existence is nothing. What the sect master really cares about is a descendant of the Huangfu family, called Huangfuyu. She shook her head lightly when she met Yi Chen's gaze. Actually, this person isn't a descendant of the Huangfu family. To be precise, he's the reincarnation of the Huangfu family's patriarch. This person has a single metal spirit root. Chu Zhongtian took over the topic and said, he built his foundation 100 days after birth, formed his core in 1,000 days, formed his nascent soul in 3 years, and formed his soul in 5 years. Now, he's already at mid-stage void refinement. This person only took 12 years to go from peak soul formation to void refinement. Such aptitude is indeed shocking. Yi Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. However, it makes sense if he's really the reincarnation of the Huangfu family's patriarch. By the way, this person's previous life was from the secular world of Earth like you. Chu Zhongtian suddenly said, I got Ling Long to investigate. In his previous life, Huangfu Yu was from a wealthy family called the Su family in the secular world of Earth. The secular world of Earth? A member of the wealthy Su family? Yi Chen's heart skipped a beat. He said immediately, do you know what his name was in his previous life? Chu Zhongtian immediately looked at Ling Long. After pondering for a few seconds, the latter said calmly, I think his name was Su Qilin. Su Qilin. At that moment, countless gleams flashed through Yi Chen's eyes. He was too familiar with that name. When Yi Chen destroyed the Su family and killed Su Tao, he found out about Su Qilin's existence. Later on, Yi Chen went to the Kunlun ruined sword sect to look for Yi Wushuang. He fought Su Qilin and killed him. Initially, Yi Chen thought that Su Qilin would definitely die. Never did he expect to find out from Luo Tianya that Su Qilin might not be dead after he returned from the Purple World. At that time, Yi Chen did not pay too much attention. Never did he expect to find out from Chu Zhongtian that the genius of the Huangfu family, one of the 8 Xianyuan clans, was Su Qilin. Seeing his strange expression, Chu Zhongtian could not help but say, What? Do you know this person, fellow Yi? I don't just know him. Yi Chen grinned and said, I killed this person in one of his lives. I didn't expect him to be so lucky. He lived another life and became a member of the 8 Xianyuan clans. Fellow Yi killed this person in one of his lives? Hearing that, Chu Zhongtian's eyes flashed, and he immediately said with a smile, Looks like there's a fate entanglement between the two of you. It's very likely that this person is your fated enemy. Fated enemy? I've never believed in fate. Yi Chen smiled coldly and said, If I can kill him once, I can kill him again. If there's really fate, then I'll destroy fate as well. Sensing the intent coming from him, Chu Zhongtian and Ling Long could not help but look at each other. They saw a hint of shock in each other's eyes. Yi Chen's killing intent did not resemble a native living being from Earth at all. Instead, it was like a peerless demon lord had descended to the mortal world. Fellow Yi, Chu Zhongtian suddenly said, no matter what, it's very likely that Huangfu Yu will obtain the Xianyuan sword's recognition as its master. Once he obtains the Xianyuan sword and has the help of the World Guardian, you're in a bad situation. End of this chapter. Chapter 1525. Master, this bird desire is trying to scare you. Night Demon Armor's voice sounded in Yi Chen's mind after hearing what Lord of Desire said. Su Qilin and Huangfu didn't get the Xianyuan sword to acknowledge them as its master. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to do much. Night Demon is right. The Xianyuan sword is only a supreme emperor weapon after all, not an immortal weapon. Night Demon and I are enough to deal with this Xianyuan sword. Emperor Brush secretly agreed. Moreover, the immortal slaying flying dagger is still in Insu. With it around, even that immortal soul can be killed. This human desire bird master makes it sound reasonable, but in reality, he's not a good person. Isn't his goal to trick you into following his thoughts? Night Demon Armor chuckled. I admit that even though Great Emperor Xianyuan is a genius, how can he compare to Master? Master, you're someone who has ascended to the peak of the immortal world. I know what I'm doing. Yi Chan comforted the two of them calmly before looking at Chu Zhongtian. Fellow Chu, you don't have to worry about Huangfu Yu. Now that we've met, shouldn't you release the Patriarch of Hell and the rest? Of course. Chu Zhongtian faintly smiled and clapped his hands at the void. Old Ba, let brother Huang Quan and the others out. Boom. Following his words, a huge black shadow suddenly appeared in the sky. The black shadow had a pair of green eyes that looked like lanterns. On the back of the black shadow, countless dancing pavilions and singing platforms could be faintly seen. Immortal music lingered in the air, like a paradise on earth. A grade 8 sea serpent. Yi Chan said in surprise after seeing the beast's face clearly. I didn't expect fellow Chu to have subdued a grade 8 sea serpent. As the name suggested, a mirage was a pavilion by the sea, and the vast air became a palace. It was a metaphor for illusory things. Little did he know that the mirage was an illusion created by the sea serpent, and the beast before him was a grade 8 sea serpent. In terms of realm, it was no lower than the void refinement stage. Fellow Yi, you have good eyes. Chu Zhongtian looked at him with admiration and said, Old Ba was subdued by me on the ancient starry sky path when I came to Earth from the outer realms. The Class 8 young beast called Old Ba opened its mouth and spat out a few figures, revealing the faces of Old Ancestor, Yellow Spring, and the others. Apart from the Patriarch of Hell and Yi Wushuang, who were still awake, Yang Tian and the rest were sleeping soundly. Clearly, they had fallen into an illusion. Yichen walked up and looked at the Patriarch of Hell and Yi Wushuang. Patriarch, are you guys all right? I'm fine. Old Ancestor Yellow Spring shook his head slightly and looked up at Chu Zhongtian. Chu, you're bullying me because I'm not strong enough. Just you wait. When I recover to my peak, I'll smash your man desire world into pieces. Fellow Taoist Yellow Spring, please forgive me if I offended you earlier. Chu Zhongtian laughed out loud when he heard that. If you and I can leave this realm safely and return to the spirit realm, I won't hesitate even if there are 10 of them, let alone a mere man desire world. Old Ancestor Yellow Spring did not give him any face at all. He urged Yi Chan repeatedly. Fellow Yi, let's go. I get angry whenever I see this Chu bastard. Thank you, fellow Chu. Yi Chan cupped his fists at Chu Zhongtian and left with Yang Tian and the rest. If Chu Zhongtian was unwilling to cooperate, there might be a fight today. Naturally, Yi Chan was not afraid. However, the process would not be so smooth. Fellow Yi, please stop. Chu Zhongtian suddenly said, I hope you won't tell anyone about me, especially the Tianyuan Trade Association. Of course. Yi Chan nodded, not to mention that he would not tell anyone. Even if he did, no one would believe him. After all, the tribulation stage was too far away from Earth. Also, Chu Zhongtian seemed to have thought of something and said, the reason why the Tianyuan Trade Association wants to attack the desolate God's tomb is definitely because they have their eyes on fellow Taoist Great Desolation's inheritance. I hope that fellow Yi will protect fellow Taoist Great Desolation's corpse for Chumo's sake. Don't trust the Tianyuan Trade Association too much. Remember this. His voice was getting further and further away. In the end, he completely disappeared from the world, along with the rank 8 clam beast and Ling Long. After Yi Chun and the rest were far away, Chu Zhongtian reappeared where he was earlier. His eyes were flickering. Ling Long said thoughtfully, "Sect Master, how much do you think this person believes in you? It doesn't matter whether he believes me or not." Chu Zhongtian smiled faintly and said, "What's important is that our plans for so many years are all on this person. I don't understand. Why does the sect master value this person so much?" Ling Long smiled sweetly, charming all living beings, just because the old ancestor Yellow Spring knows him. In my opinion, Huang Fuyu is more suitable for the sect master, and he's easier to control. Why? Chu Zhongtian glanced at him and suddenly smiled. That bastard from the heavenly tomb and the guy from the demon god forest both thought highly of this person. Both of them are prideful and arrogant. How can an ordinary person enter their eyes? As for Huang Fuyu, he paused and then frowned. This person can at most be considered our last resort. We'll have to wait and see for a while. Before he could finish, the world suddenly trembled violently. Then, the space in front of the two of them began to distort. In an instant, an ethereal figure appeared before the two of them. It was a young man in green clothes. He held a scripture in his hand and had an otherworldly aura. He looked like a frail scholar. "So it's Brother Wen." Chu Zhongtian smiled and said, "What's the matter that requires you to come personally?" The scholar said calmly, "You shouldn't have told him such a secret in advance. Since this person has caught the eye of both you and that person from the heavenly tomb, it's enough to show that he's destined to be involved in this storm. Since that's the case, why not tell him in advance?" Chu Zhongtian frowned, seemingly displeased. "Because I don't like it." The scholar's eyes were bright, as if billions of stars were being destroyed. "Everything has its own destiny. Your schemes will eventually backfire on you. There's no need to say such polite words to me." Chu Zhongtian smiled coldly, and his eyes turned cold. "Since you can take a liking to this person, why can't I take a liking to him? I don't like other people telling me what to do." The scholar was still calm and composed. "You want to fight me? Don't you call yourself a scholar?" Chu Zhongtian's face twitched. "Is a scholar this unreasonable? You use your fists just because you don't agree with me?" If they were at their peak, he wouldn't be afraid of this poor scholar. But now, both of their cultivations have been weakened. As for how much, only he knew. Therefore, he wasn't confident that he could fight him. Faced with such a question, the scholar smiled and said, "My fists are reason." Chapter 1526. In a luxurious courtyard in Tianyuan City, Yi Chun dismissed Yang Tian and the rest and left the Patriarch of Hell alone. He said in a deep voice, "Patriarch, do you really know the master of the Divine God Tower, Chu Zhongtian?" This trip to the Divine God Tower had made him more vigilant. He gradually realized that he might have fallen into an impending storm. To be precise, there were many invisible hands trying to control him. He had this feeling before he even stepped into the Yin ruins. For example, when he was fighting the heavenly venerable of absolute beginning's divine consciousness projection, the mysterious stone coffin that suddenly crossed realms to help him. From the looks of it, the existence in the stone coffin was most likely the master of the heavenly tomb. He had no grudges with the other party, so why would the other party help him? Secondly, when he had just entered the Yin ruins, he had met Qinxiu Wuhin in the demon god forest. Although they did not have much interaction, it was clearly not a coincidence. Now, Chu Zhongtian, the carnal desire pathmaster, had used the Patriarch of Hell and the rest as an excuse to lure him to the Divine God Tower. He then found out the true secret of the Yin ruins. Hearing that, the Patriarch of Hell said with a solemn expression, "I do. This person is indeed a tribulation stage old monster in the spirit realm. However, this person has a bad reputation in the spirit realm because he's greedy and lustful. Any woman that he takes a fancy to will submit to him and fill his harem." Yi Chan was stunned. "Then this person's personality is quite similar to yours." Wolsh *T. The Patriarch of Yellow Spring flew into a rage out of humiliation. "I never force anyone. If you go to the spiritual realm in the future, why don't you ask around and find out when I the patriarch of Yellow Spring, have forced any woman? All the women who follow me are loyal to me. Yichin did not expect him to have such a huge reaction. He changed the topic immediately. What about the one in the Demon God Forest and the one in the Heavenly Tomb? I don't know much about the patriarch in the Demon God Forest. The patriarch of Hell pondered for a moment and said seriously, I only know that that person is the patriarch of the Wood Spirit clan. He's clearly not human, but he likes the human way, studying the 4 books and 5 classics, etiquette, and so on. You know that I hate people like that the most. I'd rather deal with someone like the Carnal Desire Path Master than Qianqiu Wuan. As for the one in the Heavenly Tomb, at this point his eyes lit up. If Ancestor's guess is correct, he should be from the Corpse Sect, and he is an extremely ancient existence in the Corpse Sect. Corpsine Sect? Yichin secretly frowned upon hearing that. In the cultivation world, the Corpse Sect was the most powerful, had the most mysterious background, and was the most low-key. The Corpse Sect had a very unique cultivation method. Every new disciple would go out and find a corpse to use as their puppet. In this way, along with the growth of his cultivation, the corpse puppets would grow stronger as well, and it would undoubtedly be a great help to him. As a result, every Corpse Sect disciple that went out would carry a coffin with their corpse puppet inside. When other sects saw their appearance, they would immediately recognize that they were from the Corpse Sect. The reason why it was said that the Corpse Sect was the most powerful was because the Corpse Sect had branches almost everywhere. From a small prefecture to a large world, they could be seen almost everywhere. Other than that, the Corpse Sect also secretly traded corpses. In the cultivation world, there were always people who had no choice but to abandon their physical bodies and find a perfect cauldron to cultivate again because their lifespan was about to end. The Corpse Sect could provide them with suitable cauldrons. It could be said that there were many types of cauldrons. Men, women, young, old, beautiful, ugly. As long as one could afford it, they could always get it. Yichin could not help but look at the Patriarch of Hell as he thought to this point. If that person in the Heavenly Tomb is from the Corpse Sect, what's his purpose? Could it be that he has become the immortal body of that ancient immortal? Very likely. The Patriarch of Hell nodded slightly and said, Those gloomy fellows from the Corpse Sect always like to deal with corpses. Ordinary corpses are already like that, let alone the body of an immortal. Of course, they definitely want to obtain the method to become an immortal. Yichin thought about it and subsequently told him all the secrets that Chu Zhongtian had told him. The Patriarch of Hell pondered for a while before saying, None of these guys are easy to deal with. My opinion is that we don't listen to anyone, even that great Emperor Xianyuan. He took a good look at Yi Chun as he said to this point, It seems like the situation in Yinsu is very complicated. It's even extremely dangerous. Fellow Yi, if I were you, I would abandon everything and bring your family to the cultivation world. Only by escaping from this world can we not be affected. That's not my character. Yichin interrupted. I don't think I'm a good person, but I'm definitely not an evil or selfish person. Earth is my home planet after all. My ancestors have been buried in this world for generations. If you want me to abandon this world, what's the difference between that and being a disloyal, unfilial, and heartless person? I guess that's what you're thinking. The Patriarch of Hell smiled as if he was not surprised at all. Then we can only wade into this muddy water. After all, the body of an immortal is quite tempting to me. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. By the way, Chu Zhongtian once said that the brother of that damn toad is the guardian of Yin Su. Why don't you call it out and ask? It disappeared a long time ago. Yi Chen shook his head and smiled. This guy disappeared after I returned from the space trade fair. I think he left. This damn toad. I didn't expect it to have such a powerful backer. No wonder it was so arrogant before the Patriarch side. In the core of Yin Su, black fog swept. Croak, croak, croak. In the strange black fog, a golden toad ignored the black fog and slowly jumped forward. It seemed to be displeased as it said, Second brother, it's not easy for me to escape. Do you really want to capture me back so heartlessly? In the face of its ridicule, the black fog became even more intimidating, but there was no movement at all. All right, second brother, Just let me go back. The toad rolled its eyes a few times and could not help but pretend to be pitiful. When I return this time, boss will definitely punish me severely. Can you bear to watch me? Roar. Before it could finish speaking, a pair of bloody eyes that were like red lanterns suddenly lit up in the black fog. Shut up. Your sneaking out this time has attracted the attention of too many existences. If they weren't afraid of boss deterrence, you would have been captured and refined into medicine long ago. An enraged voice rang out from the boiling black fog. Most importantly, boss is injured. What? Boss is injured? The toad immediately exploded. How is that possible? Boss is so powerful. Who can injure him? Tell me, I'll burn him to death. It's a saber, a very fast saber. That saber is so fast that even boss can't see it clearly. If not for the sword intent emitted by the Xinyuan sword in the Emperor's tomb, boss might have died under that saber. Hearing this, the toad was instantly dumbfounded. Boss sensed that the Emperor's tomb is about to open, so he ordered me to bring you back to protect the Emperor's tomb together to prevent the existence in the demonic soil from invading the Emperor's tomb. End of this chapter. Chapter 1527. It was a sleepless night. The next morning, when the first ray of sunlight pierced through the clouds and shrouded the ground, the atmosphere in the outer area of the Een ruins rose rapidly. One could faintly feel the killing intent contained within. Everyone knew that the desolate god's tomb was about to open. There were many rumors in the Een ruins. It was said that Old Man Great Desolation was comparable to that person in the demon god forest. He had once killed his way into the forbidden area and dyed it with blood. Although he died, he only died when he returned to the outer area of the Een ruins. The forbidden area was an abyss that blocked everyone. Countless people coveted it, but they had no choice but to look up to it. Even the 5 sacred grounds were no exception. They all wanted to explore the secrets of the forbidden area. As for that person in the demon god forest, no one dared to touch him. However, it was different for Old Man Great Desolation. After all, the former had died long ago and turned into a tomb. There might be some powerful cultivation techniques or secret techniques that allowed one to safely enter the forbidden area. At the city gate of Tianyuan City, at this moment, it could be said that many experts had gathered. Ferocious beasts covered the sky and earth, and dazzling soldiers stood like a forest. The killing intent that they emitted was almost material, especially the dozen or so figures that were leading the group. They stood proudly in the sky like gods. Their breathing was thunderous, and their gazes were like lightning, causing a great deterrent to many of the spectators. If there were outsiders present, they would definitely notice that these people were from Tianyuan City. To be more precise, they were the core members of the Tianyuan commerce. At this moment, there was a woman in a red dress, and she had a heroic air about her. She seemed like a woman who wasn't inferior to a man. The woman's brows were slightly furrowed as she looked around, as if she was waiting for someone. It's almost time. Before her, a dignified man looked at the sky and then frowned at the woman. Ziyue, why hasn't the external help you invited arrived yet? Fang's bit her lips. Uncle, I think Senior Yi is. Before she could finish speaking, the handsome young man in divine robes beside her couldn't help but smile and say, Little Sister Ziyue, don't tell me that the external help you invited was afraid. So he ran away at the last minute? As soon as those words were spoken, numerous gazes landed on Fang Ziyue. There were many emotions in those gazes, such as smirks and schadenfreude. In this attack on the desolate god's tomb, the young people of the 4 branches of the Heavenly Yuan Chamber of Commerce all moved out together. All of them rubbed their palms together because everyone knew that this was a test. If they passed the test, not only would they be able to fight for the faction behind them, but they would also be able to suppress the other 3 factions and take over the Heavenly Essence Chamber of Commerce. Thus, even though everyone seemed to be extremely amiable towards each other on the surface, there were even more open and veiled strife between them, and they wished for nothing more than for each other to make a fool of themselves in public. Fang Qingwu, shut your stinky mouth. Hearing those words, Fang Ziyue fiercely glared at him and said coldly, I believe, Senior, you won't break his promise. So what if I don't break my promise? The young man called Fong Chengwu chuckled. In this competition, my orange vein is determined to win. For this reason, I've invited fellow Taoist Luo Xiao. Boom! As his voice fell, the space above everyone's heads suddenly distorted. Then, a giant-like figure descended from the sky. That person's chest and abdomen were exposed, and his cheekbones were high. His facial features were slightly different from humans, and overall, he looked like a wild beast. As that person appeared, Fong Ziyue's expression changed. Second on the 10 great villains ranking, Gui, Jian, Chou Luo Xiao. What? He's Luo Xiao? The head disciple that Tian Xiezi is proud of? It's rumored that this person deeply inherited Tian Xiezi's teachings. Before the age of 300, he resolutely stepped into the great perfection of deity transformation. Moreover, his battle prowess is extremely terrifying, and he has the title of the number 1 person below the void refinement stage. That's not all. It's said that this person cultivates an extremely strange divine ability that can instantly explode with battle prowess comparable to the void refinement stage. After seeing the appearance of the person who came, the expressions of the many young people around Fong Ziyue all changed. Even some of the people who were hired as external help were no exception. So it's nephew Luo Xiao. The eyes of the dignified man who spoke earlier flashed. Then he looked at Luo Xiao with a bit of admiration and said, "May I ask how your master is?" "Uncle Master Fong, my master is doing very well now." Luo Xiao grinned with a cold expression. "My master sent me here this time to help Cheng Wu's young master, but also to see what the fellow who killed my uncle master is capable of." Fong Ziyue's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. Then she suddenly looked at Fong Chengwu. "Fong Chengwu, you're really smart." At that moment, she finally understood Fong Chengwu's motive. Yichen had killed Old Man Tian Mo earlier, and Old Man Tian Mo was Luo Xiao's uncle master. Clearly, Fong Chengwu had specially invited Luo Xiao here to fight Yichen. To be precise, he wanted to fight her, Fong Ziyue. "Sister Ziyue, you're being too polite," Fong Chengwu said with a fake smile. "The reason why I invited fellow Luo Xiao here is for the champion of this competition. I have no intention of targeting you, Sister Ziyue." How could Fong Ziyue not know his hypocrisy? She ignored him after scoffing. However, there was a hint of worry deep in her beautiful eyes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1529. Yichen smiled upon hearing Luo Xiao's venomous words. He then retracted his gaze, as if he did not hear what Luo Xiao said. Fong Chengwu, who was sitting next to Luo Xiao, seemed to have noticed this detail. He glanced at Yichen and Fong Ziyue with a forced smile before saying to Luo Xiao through voice transmission, "Brother Luo, why are you so concerned about this person?" He stretched his sitting posture slightly and said in disdain, "This person is nothing in your brother Luo's eyes. As long as you help me get first place this time, won't you be able to deal with this person at will?" At this point, a mocking expression flowed in his eyes. "At that time, this person's life and death will be in my hands. Perhaps Brother Luo won't even need to do anything. Don't worry, young Master Fong. I know what I'm doing." Luo Xiao glanced at Yichen's back with extreme resentment again and said in a deep voice, "Then I'll let this person live for a while longer. When the time comes, I'll capture him and bring him back to report to Master." How could he not know what Fong Chengwu was implying? He was warning him not to ruin the Orange Bloodline's plans for personal grudges. Moreover, the reason why he had come out this time was for the void soaring dragon pill that the Fong family's Orange Bloodline had provided. If he obtained it, he would be able to increase his chances of entering the void refinement stage. About 4 hours later, majestic mountains appeared in everyone's line of sight. Many majestic mountains entered everyone's line of sight. Some of the mountains were shrouded in black fog, while others were shrouded in spiritual fog. They all gave off a strange aura. These mountains seemed to be circular in shape, encompassing a radius of several hundred miles. At the very center, there was a long dragon of baleful aura that seemed to be roaring furiously. Even though they were so far away, everyone could still feel the wisps of murderous aura that were being emitted as if they were being watched by a peerless, ferocious creature. It was a tremble that came from the depths of their souls. Is this the forsaken abyss? What a dense aura of death. Oh my God, how many people must have died to accumulate to such an extent? On the huge sleeves, many of the Fong family's younger generation looked at this scene in shock. At this moment, all sorts of people had already arrived in the sky and on the ground. The lowest cultivation base was at the late-stage god transformation stage. However, the atmosphere was very silent, as if they were waiting for everyone to arrive. After all, the desolate god's tomb needed many forces to open it. Do you see the ring-shaped valley? The middle-aged man who was in charge stood facing the wind and looked into the sky. The desolate god's tomb is located at the entrance. Yichen followed his gaze and looked over. He could vaguely see that there seemed to be an extremely profound barrier enveloping the huge ring-shaped abyss 5 kilometers away. The barrier was engraved with ancient and mysterious patterns. It was filled with boundless power, as if it was enveloped in celestial light. Looks like this barrier was set up by great Emperor Xianyuan. The divine fire in his eyes flickered faintly, and he immediately saw through the entire enchantment. He couldn't help but secretly nod, and it seems that he wants to seal the entire core and forbidden area of the Yinshu. Great Emperor Xianyuan is indeed talented. No, there's a flaw in the barrier? Yi Chen's eyes flickered. He focused on a gap in the southeast corner that was difficult to detect. He frowned and said, with great Emperor Xuanyuan's ability, he should have noticed this gap. Unless, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Unless this gap is man-made. Just as he was lost in thought, he heard someone exclaim, "Look, the people from the great Jiang God dynasty are here." Swoosh, following the intense sound of something tearing through the air, everyone saw a red light flying over at a speed that was difficult to catch with the naked eye. In just a few breaths of time, the red light landed less than 3,000 meters away from the crowd. It was an extremely ferocious, demonic bird with a crimson body. Soon after, 2 figures appeared on the back of the demonic bird with their hands behind their backs. The person standing at the front was a man in a blue robe. The man's eyes were deep like the ocean, unfathomable. Behind him was a young man with long hair. The young man's armor shone brightly, making it difficult for people to look at him. It's the great Jiang God dynasty's 3rd prince, Jiang Hongyun, and the great Jiang God's son, Jiang Li. Rumor has it that the 3rd prince, Jiang Hongyuan, entered the void refinement stage 10 years ago. This time, the great Jiang God dynasty clearly wants him to lead the team to intimidate the other forces. Cries of surprise immediately rang out from the crowd that had already arrived. Obviously, they were surprised by the 2 people on the demonic bird. "Brother Hongyuan, how have you been?" The middle-aged man from the Fong family, who was in charge of leading the team, smiled faintly. Then his figure flashed and instantly landed in front of Jiang Hongyuan. Jiang Hongyuan's stiff expression finally changed slightly. He nodded slightly and said, "Brother Fong Tianqiu, I didn't expect you to lead the team this time." The few sacred grounds fought openly and secretly, but to the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce, none of that existed. After all, there were merchants, and merchants were only interested in profit. Naturally, they would not easily offend any faction. Sensing Jiang Hongyuan's coldness, Fong Tianqiu did not mind. He turned his gaze to Jiang Li. "Nephew Jiang Li, I apologize to you on behalf of Tianyuan City for what happened the day before yesterday." Naturally, he was talking about how Yi Chun had helped Yang Tian snatch the void soaring dragon pill from the crowd after the spatial trade fair. "Senior Fong, you're too serious." Jiang Li glanced at the Fong family's camp with an unnatural expression. He then retracted his gaze and said, "Nephew, you can't blame anyone for being inferior." Fong Tianqiu did not say anything else. After returning to the Fong family, he instructed them to wait patiently. Not long after, countless figures flashed over from the horizon, causing the atmosphere in this space to rise to the extreme. The people from the Panwu Immortal Sect are here. However, the one leading the team this time is Su Mingxi, who's ranked second among the 10 true disciples of the Panwu immortal sect. Nonsense. After the death of the Panwu immortal sect's young master, Hongya, Su Mingqi is the strongest among the younger generation of the Panwu immortal sect. How could it not come? The people from the Tianxian Holy Land are here too. No one knew who shouted, but a jade boat carved from green jade rose into the sky. The large boat was richly ornamented, and there were orioles and swallows. It was a charming sight. The person in the lead was a woman dressed in white. Her every word and action was flirtatious and extremely alluring. However, no one dared to look at her directly. This was because the woman was the first disciple of the Tianxian Peak's peak master in the Tianxian Holy Land. She was the youngest void refinement powerhouse in the entire Tianxian Peak. The woman landed on the jade boat and landed in front of Fong Tianqiu and the rest. She smiled and said, Sorry to have kept you waiting. So it's Elder Lu Ruyin from the Tianxian Peak. Jiang Hongyuan and Fong Tianqiu returned the greeting. They did not dare to underestimate the other party, just because she was a woman. Yichen looked through the jade boat and said in surprise, I didn't expect her to come too. End of this chapter. Chapter 1530. On the Tianyuan Holy Land jade boat, he actually saw the Tianyuan Holy Maiden who had used a seduction technique on him outside Tianyuan City. After the woman suffered a backlash, Yichen thought that she would need to recover for a while. He did not expect her to be in time for the opening of the desolate god's tomb. Clearly, the Tianyuan Holy Land had put in a lot of effort on her. Senior Yi, do you know someone from the Tianyuan Holy Land? As if sensing his abnormality, Fong Ziyue immediately followed his gaze and said with a faint smile, Could it be that you've taken a fancy to the woman from the Tianyuan Holy Land? If that's the case, I can be your matchmaker. Yichen shook his head lightly and retracted his gaze. Almost at that moment, the Tianyuan Holy Maiden on the huge jade boat seemed to have noticed something and looked at the Tianyuan Trade Association's camp. Her intuition told her that a gaze had come from there. However, to her disappointment, she did not notice Yichen's presence. Instead, she was attracted by Fong Ziyue. As if sensing the atmosphere, Fong Tianqiu took the initiative to break the atmosphere with a smile. Now, only the Taichu Dojo and the Yanhuang Fortress are left. Just as he finished speaking, the space suddenly distorted. An old man in green slowly walked out of the storm. How can we, the 8 Xianyuan clans, miss such a grand event? The old man's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it exploded in everyone's ears like thunder, immediately attracting everyone's attention. Lei Yunzi. It's Lei Yunzi from the Yanhuang Fortress. The people behind him must be from the 8 Xianyuan clans. However, many forces are led by elders. Why is there only Lei Yunzi from the 8 Xianyuan clans? I'm afraid you guys don't know. A few days ago, the 5 Holy Lands joined forces to descend on the Yanhuang Fortress because of Mad Southern Yi. Both sides had a huge battle, and both sides were injured. At this moment, the 8 Xianyuan clans are probably planning to avoid them. Hearing the discussion, even Yichen could not help but look over. It was his first time seeing Lei Yunzi since he entered the Yin ruins. The old man in green acted as if he did not hear him. With a wave of his sleeve, he landed on the ground with several young men and women. The young men and women behind him all had extraordinary auras. They were not weaker than some of the older generation experts present. The one who attracted the most attention was the silver-haired young man who was walking in second place. The young man's face was absolutely beautiful like a god, and his eyes were bright like the stars, shining brightly. Coupled with his long hair and strong masculine aura, it was difficult not to notice him. Even the women of the Heavenly Jade Holy Land were no exception. Ha ha! As the green-robed old man's group appeared, the woman leading the Heavenly Jade Holy Lands team, Rowena, giggled and said, Fellow Taoist Lei Yun, why did you come alone from the Xianyuan 8 clans? Her words might seem casual, but she actually had an ulterior motive. Her motive was to remind everyone of the previous matter. A faint smile appeared on Lei Yunzi's face. Thank you for your concern, Elder Lu. Our Xianyuan 8 races are of one mind, so it makes no difference whether we send 8 people or just one. As soon as these words were spoken, Many people nodded to themselves, and they were moved by the boldness of Lei Yunzi's words. Elder Lu's eyes flickered slightly, but he continued to welcome him with a smile. On the other hand, the third prince of the great Jiang God dynasty, Jiang Hongyuan, had a grim expression. It was as if he did not see Lei Yunzi's arrival. After all, the two sides had fought before. Only Fang Tianqiu of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce subconsciously glanced at the silver-haired young man behind Lei Yunzi and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Lei Yun, the person behind you must be the genius of the Huangfu family. Huangfu, you right?" As soon as he said that, countless gazes immediately turned to look at the silver-haired young man behind Lei Yunzi. Huangfu Yu. Everyone present could not be more familiar with this name. The genius of the Huangfu family from the Xianyuan 8 clans suppressed all the younger generation of the Xianyuan 8 clans. His aptitude was superb, and his talent was overflowing. Even the 5 sacred grounds had to want to rope him in. Yichen stared at the silver-haired young man after hearing what Fang Tianqiu said. His eyes flickered. From the moment the silver-haired young man appeared, he had sensed that the latter was extraordinary. Huangfu Yu, Yichen could not help but smirk as he thought to this point. Are you Huangfu Yu or Su Qilin? Hearing Fang Tianqiu's words, Lei Yunzi smiled and said, "Fellow Fang, you have a good eye. You actually recognized the most outstanding genius of the Xianyuan 8 clans at a glance." After saying that, he immediately said, "Huangfu Yu, greet all the seniors and fellow Taoists." Under everyone's gazes, the silver-haired young man took a step forward and smiled at everyone. "I'm Huangfu Yu. Greetings, everyone." His silver hair was scattered, and his eyes were resplendent. Many of the younger generation present felt ashamed of their inferiority, and they subconsciously lowered their heads. Is this person Huangfu Yu? He's so handsome. That's right. If I can make him my dual cultivation partner, I'm willing even if I have to shorten my lifespan by 20 years. You hussy, save it. In the Tianxian Holy Land, many women who had been extremely calm earlier were now looking at Huangfu Yu with infatuation. Only Luo Xiu's expression was gloomy, and his eyes were burning with jealousy. As if sensing his thoughts, Fang Chengwu could not help but comfort him. "Brother Luo, this person can't be underestimated. It's very likely that he'll be your greatest opponent in the desolate god's tomb." Luo Xiu nodded with a serious expression. At the same time, Fang Ziyue, who was next to Yi Chun, looked at Huangfu Yu and said to him, "Senior Yi, I think the 8 Xianyuan clans are determined to get Huangfu Yu. If you meet him in the desolate god's tomb, avoid him if you can." Yi Chun smiled without saying anything when he heard that. His eyes flashed. "If I meet him, how can I not eliminate him?" If Fang Ziyue were to find out about his thoughts, she would surely be shocked speechless. Nephew Huangfu has already stepped into the void refinement stage and is on the same level as us. How can we still call ourselves seniors? The third prince of the great Jiang God dynasty, Jiang Hongyuan, said indifferently, "However, the desolate god's tomb only allows cultivators below the void refinement stage to enter. Fellow Huangfu, are you here to play?" As soon as he said this, everyone immediately nodded. Huangfu Yu smiled warmly and said slowly, "Before coming here, I severed a portion of my cultivation base. Now, I'm at the perfected soul formation stage." As soon as he finished speaking, the world fell into dead silence. He had severed his cultivation base. Huangfu Yu was clearly at the void refinement stage, but he had severed his cultivation base for the desolate god's tomb, causing his cultivation base to fall to the perfected soul formation stage. It was not an exaggeration to describe this as crazy. After all, countless soul formation cultivators had spent their entire lives trying to enter the void refinement stage. However, the former did the exact opposite. Jiang Hongyuan, Fang Tianqiu, and the rest could not help but look at each other. They could see the shock in each other's eyes. "Nephew, you're so brave." Jiang Hongyuan took a deep breath in and said, "The Huangfu family's actions could only mean that they were determined to obtain the items in the desolate god's tomb." Right at this moment, an explosion suddenly came from a void. Old geezer Lei Yun, Your 8 Xinyuan clans are really ambitious. The heavenly sovereign of absolute beginning is here. Hearing this voice, everyone's hearts trembled. Chapter 15:31. In the sky, a green figure slowly walked out from the crack in the void and stood in the air. The rather old figure exuded an aura that made heaven and earth tremble. Surprisingly, the figure was an old man wearing a green jade robe and a purple gold crown. His eyes were black and white, and there was a clear distinction between them. Behind him was a towering young man. The young man's skin was bronze, and he looked valiant and extraordinary. With the appearance of the old man, the entire world outside the forsaken abyss fell silent. Even Lei Yunzi, Lu Ruyan, and the others could not help but look over. The person who came was the heavenly venerate of Taichu, the master of the Holy Land of Taichu. Although the Holy Land of Taichu was ranked at the bottom of the 5 great holy lands, it was still one of the 5 great holy lands. Ordinary foreign sects could not compare to it. Moreover, the heavenly venerate of Taichu had come personally. The heavenly venerate of Taichu? Yichen looked at the old man calmly. A sharp light flashed through his eyes, and he could not help but nod to himself. In terms of temperament, the heavenly venerate of Taichu was in line with his identity as the master of a holy land. The pressure that faintly emanated from his body was not something that Elder Ku could compare to. Greetings, fellow Taichu. Almost at that moment, Fang Tianqiu of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce, the third prince of the great Jiang God dynasty, Jiang Hongyuan, and the others nodded to the heavenly venerate of Taichu. Even Lei Yunzi was no exception. The heavenly venerate of Taichu's expression was dignified as his indifferent gaze swept across the crowd. Then, he looked at Fang Tianqiu and the others. Since everyone is here, let's work together to break the seal. Haha, of course. Fang Tianqiu smiled slightly, and the others had no objections. The heavenly venerate of Taichu took a step forward and instantly landed above the forsaken abyss. He said slowly, "The forsaken abyss was originally blessed by the great emperor Xuanyuan's barrier, and the great desolation old man set up a seal on his tomb before he died. If we attack it by force, it will be futile." With that, his gaze suddenly focused as he looked at a certain space on the ground and said, "However, there is a loophole here. If we attack it together, it will not be difficult to break the seal." Fellow Taichu is indeed extraordinary. The great Jiang God dynasty's third prince, Jiang Hongyuan, smiled faintly and said, "The great Jiang God dynasty has already taken control of this loophole. It must be caused by the demonic energy of the demonic earth." Was it caused by the corrosion of demonic energy? Lei Yunzi's expression darkened slightly. If it's been corroded by the devilish qi, then doesn't that mean the entire forsaken abyss has already been enveloped by devilish qi? If we break the seal, then wouldn't the entire outer region be exposed to the devilish qi as well? Umph. The primeval heavenly lord snorted coldly. "Old Thundercloud, since when have you become so timid? What fellow Taoist Jiang said was only a guess. If that's the case, do you think this seal can trap the demonic earth qi? Since that's the case, let's begin." Lei Yunzi no longer hesitated. He stomped his foot on the ground, and a large bow appeared in the air before him. The bow was bathed in terrifying lightning, as if it was going to destroy the world. Great Thunder Bow. Someone immediately identified the bow as Lei Yunzi's sole treasure. Boom! Lei Yunzi waved his hand casually, and the great thunderous bow immediately erupted with dazzling lightning. Immediately afterward, a lightning-like beam of light shot toward the southeast corner of the forsaken abyss. Its speed was comparable to that of lightning. Wherever it passed, the space collapsed and turned into a prison of lightning, as if it couldn't bear the weight. Whoosh whoosh, after he made his move, a treasured fan suddenly appeared in Fang Tianqiu's hand. As soon as the fan appeared, it immediately expanded, and 7 true spirit Dharma forms appeared on it. On the ground, Fang Chung Wu said enviously, "Uncle's 7 birds flame fan." Fang Tianqiu waved the treasured fan in his hand, and a rapidly rotating wave was formed in front of him. As far as the eye could see, it was a sea of red, as if the entire world had turned into a sea of fire. Go! With a shout from Fong Tianqiu, the huge wave was like a sea of fire that crossed the heavens and earth, rapidly attacking the place where Lei Yunzi attacked. Buzz, buzz, a golden spear suddenly appeared in the hand of the great Jiang Divine Dynasty's third prince, Jiang Hongyuan. As the spear trembled violently, dazzling golden light blossomed, and in the end, it turned into a golden spear that was 500 feet long and shot out. Meanwhile, a red caltrop suddenly shot out from the hand of Elder Lu Ruyan of the Heavenly Jade Holy Land. The red caltrop seemed to transform into a monstrous blood dragon that whistled out. Unlike the previous few, the Heavenly Venerate of Taichu had his hands behind his back. He didn't seem to move at all, but suddenly, a huge fiery red sword tore through the sky from between his brows. Boom, boom, boom. As the five of them attacked, the world immediately trembled, causing the expressions of everyone on the ground to change drastically. After all, the five of them were all at the void refinement stage, and they had even used their primordial spirit treasures. Such a commotion was only to attack a flaw in the seal of the Forsaken Abyss. One could not help but admire the methods of great Emperor Xianyuan and Old Man of Great Desolation once again. Among the five of them, the Heavenly Venerate of Taichu has the strongest cultivation base. Yichen's focus was on the five of them. He thought to himself, their cultivation bases are almost at the beginner void refinement stage, but this Heavenly Venerate of Taichu gives off an unreal feeling. Just as he was thinking, the terrifying attacks of the five of them had already landed heavily on the flaw in the seal of the Forsaken Abyss. Boom! As the earth-shattering sound rang out, everyone realized that the world seemed to be shaking. Subsequently, an energy barrier immediately appeared above the Forsaken Abyss. On the energy barrier, the power of divine inscriptions and talismans surged. Clearly, this energy barrier was the seal of the Forsaken Abyss. Swish! The first to arrive was Lei Yunzi's great thunderbow. With one arrow, the energy barrier shook violently a few times, and many runes were erased. Boom, boom, boom! The attacks of the other four followed closely behind, turning into violent energy that crazily attacked the flaw in the seal. Immediately, an ear-piercing crisp sound rang out. The seal is about to break. Someone saw that a crack that could be seen with the naked eye was gradually appearing on the energy barrier. Before everyone could react, they heard a deafening sound. In the end, the energy barrier could not bear the weight and collapsed, turning into countless terrifying storms that swept in all directions. At the same time, at the entrance of the Forsaken Abyss, a palace that seemed to be built in the clouds appeared. The palace was grand and imposing, and it was incomparably oppressive. It's the Desolate God's Tomb. The Desolate God's Tomb has appeared. The seal has been broken. Charge! Seeing this scene, the people below were overjoyed. Then, they saw figures accompanied by the sound of wind whistling as they turned into long arcs and flew towards the enormous palace. Let's go! Fong Chengwu shouted and charged out all of a sudden. Behind him, Luo Xiu glared at Yi Chun in a creepy manner before following him. Fong Ziyue was eager to give it a try. Senior Yi, let's go too. End of this chapter. Chapter 1532. However, Yi Chun did not answer. He raised his eyes and looked into the distance. Among the many figures, there were people from the five holy lands, such as the great Jiang God Dynasty's godson, Jiang Li, and the Heavenly Jade Holy Land Saintess. Meanwhile, Yi Chun's gaze finally landed on the 8 Xianyuan clans. Over there, the graceful Huangfu Yu was not in a hurry. It was as if he was not in a hurry to rush in. His calm and composed temperament was unique in the chaotic crowd. Huangfu Yu, do you still remember your mission this time? Lei Yunzi looked at the genius of the Huangfu family calmly. The Great Desolation Elder is suspected to be a powerhouse above the Void Refinement stage. Your mission is to obtain the Great Desolation Elder's inheritance. This concerns the future of the 8 Xianyuan clans. Grandmaster Lei Yun, Huangfu Yu knows. Huang Fuyu remained calm in the face of his reminder. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something and looked at Yichun. The two of them looked at each other before quickly looking away. There was no surprise or other emotions, as if they had seen strangers. Lei Yunzi took a deep look at the former before saying to the paragons of the 8 Xianyuan clans behind him, "As for your mission, I believe you've already known about it. I only have one thing to say. Come back alive." Although the people of the 5 holy lands were welcoming each other with smiles on their faces, in reality, they were like fire and water. In the outside world, with their seniors taking care of them, no one dared to touch them. However, in the desolate god's tomb, it was inevitable that they would attack each other. If they died, they would die. After all, outsiders were not immortals, so they could not know what was going on inside. Yes, following a chorus of voices, many young men and women moved their bodies and rushed towards the desolate god's tomb. Huang Fuyu was at the back. Seeing that more and more people were entering, Fang Ziyue could not hold it in anymore. She urged Yi Chun, "Senior Yi, let's go in quickly. Let's go." Yi Chun waved his sleeve and carried Fang Ziyue toward the entrance of the desolate god's tomb. He was neither fast nor slow among the crowd. Even so, his figure still attracted the attention of many people. In the void, the great Jiang God dynasty's 3rd prince, Jiang Hongyuan, looked at Yi Chen's back like a divine lamp. He said to Fang Tianqiu, "Fellow Fang, is this person the external help that your Tianyuan Trade Association invited?" Fang Tianqiu was slightly stunned. He immediately looked toward the voice and saw Yi Chun next to Fang Ziyue. He could not help but say nonchalantly, "That's right. This person is the external help that the Purple faction hired." He seemed to have thought of something and added, "This person killed Tian Xiezi's junior brother, Old Man Tian Mo, Elder Tian Mo." His words immediately attracted the attention of the rest. Lei Yunzi glanced at Yi Chen's back and said in surprise, "Although Old Man Tian Mo is only at stage soul formation, he's not far from void refinement. This person is quite capable to be able to kill him." Then, he couldn't help but shake his head. It's a pity. He killed Old Man Tian Mo and is destined to offend Tian Xiezi. Although Tian Xiezi's temperament is unbearable, he is still at the void training stage. As soon as he finished speaking, a mocking voice sounded in his ears. "No matter how strong he is he stronger than Mad Southern Yi from China?" It was the heavenly venerate of absolute beginning who had spoken. Hearing the words Mad Southern Yi, the eyes of many present flickered. They could not be more familiar with this name. In fact, whether it was directly or indirectly, there were some grudges between them. Lei Yunzi's expression darkened slightly as he frowned and said, "Fellow Tai Chu, this matter has already been resolved. Why do you have to bring it up again?" He had mixed feelings about these 3 words. He, Lei Yunzi, was someone who truly cared about China. Otherwise, the higher-ups would not have appointed him to be in charge of Yinsu. Naturally, he was overjoyed that China had someone as talented as Yi Chun. However, everything that Yi Chun did after returning to Earth had broken the balance and put China in a dangerous situation. Coupled with the Gu family of the Xianyuan 8 clans stirring up trouble, many people in the Xianyuan 8 clans viewed Yi Chun with hostility. In order to maintain this balance, he could only bear the pain and give up on Yi Chun. Bring it up again? The heavenly venerate of absolute beginning snorted coldly and said, "Don't forget the conditions that I mentioned earlier. You guys haven't agreed to them yet." "That's impossible." Hearing this, Lei Yunzi was immediately enraged. "Don't bring trouble to your family. You, the heavenly venerate of absolute beginning, don't even understand this logic? Even if Mad Southern Yi is in the wrong, what's wrong with his family?" In the battle a few days ago, the Yanhuang fortress finally compromised, and the price of compromise was to expel Mad Southern Yi. The heavenly venerate of absolute beginning also raised another condition, which was Yi Chen's parents, wife, and children. However, as soon as this condition was raised, it was strongly opposed by Lei Yunzi and the rest. "Don't you dare raise this condition again." Lei Yunzi narrowed his eyes and said firmly, Just because China doesn't want to cause trouble doesn't mean that we're afraid of it. Seeing this, the heavenly venerate of absolute beginning's expression changed slightly. In the end, he did not insist anymore. He knew very well that China still had hidden tricks up their sleeves. If they continued to force it, it would only endanger themselves. A powerhouse from the Panwu immortal sect said coldly, "Our Panwu immortal sect will not let this brat off. If we find out that China is protecting this brat, we won't let this matter rest. That depends on your abilities." Lei Yunzi waved his sleeve and did not speak anymore. At the entrance of the Forsaken Abyss, when the figures passed by, they immediately felt an invisible pressure. Plop! Many people fell heavily to the ground and vomited blood. When they looked at the huge palace that was close at hand again, their faces were filled with shock. What a powerful formation. The Great Desolation Old Man is really something. He's still causing trouble even after he's dead. He's not letting us fly in his tomb. Someone cursed, but he obediently walked toward the huge palace step by step, no longer daring to fly in the air. When Yi Chun arrived with Fong Ziyue, he saw Fong Chengwu and Luo Xiao guarding the place, as if they were waiting for someone. Are they going to fight here? Fong Ziyue's expression changed slightly. The first thing she thought of was that Luo Xiao could not hold it in anymore and wanted to attack Yi Chun in advance to avenge old man Tian Mo. However, in the next moment, a group of people walked over. The person leading them was Huang Fuyu. Luo Xiao stared straight at Huang Fuyu, and his originally gloomy face immediately revealed a smile. "Genius disciple of the Huangfu family, you're quite bold. You didn't hesitate to sever your cultivation base to enter the desolate god's tomb." The provocation in his eyes was self-evident. "Be *****. How dare you be so rude to Brother Yu? You're just a rogue cultivator. Who do you think you are?" His words immediately attracted the angry glares of many young disciples of the 8 Xinyuan clans. Currently, Huang Fuyu was a legend among the younger generation of the 8 Xinyuan clans. However, Huang Fuyu ignored Luo Xiao's provocation as if he did not see it. Subsequently, his gaze landed on Yi Chun, and a gentle smile bloomed on his calm face. "Brother Yi, long time no see." Into this chapter, Chapter 1533. Brother Yi, long time no see. Huang Fuyu had silver hair, and he looked like a god who had descended to the mortal world. His eyes were dazzling as he looked at Yi Chun quietly, as if he was seeing an old friend. There was not the slightest bit of enmity or arrogance coming from him. "That's right, long time no see." Yi Chun looked at him and tried to see through his mind. "I didn't expect to meet you in this way and in this situation." He smiled and stared straight at the former. "Should I call you Su Qilin or Huang Fuyu?" At this moment, he was almost certain that the genius disciple of the Huangfu family before him was Su Qilin, whom he had killed back then. It seemed like Chu Zhongtian, the carnal desires sect master, did not lie to him. Facing his question, Huang Fuyu smiled lightly. "Su Qilin is my past, and Huang Fuyu is my present. As for the future, I don't know what I'll be called. Brother Yi, since it's the past, shouldn't we let it go?" He seemed to be looking at Yi Chun sincerely as he spoke to this point. At the same time, Fong Ziyue, Luo Xiao, and the rest watched this scene in disbelief. Yi Chun knew Huang Fuyu? Judging from their conversation, they did not seem like strangers at all. Due to the situation, Fong Ziyue could only hide her doubts in her heart and did not ask. However, her beautiful eyes could not help but size up Huang Fuyu. Her eyes shone brightly. As for the younger generation of the Xinyuan 8 clans behind Huang Fuyu, although they were puzzled, they did not dare interrupt. Meanwhile, Luo Xiao's face was extremely livid. He was the external help of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce's Orange faction. Apart from Huang Fuyu, he did not take anyone seriously. For that, he had specially waited for Huang Fuyu at the entrance of the desolate god's tomb. Never did he expect that Huang Fuyu would not even look at him from the beginning to the end. Instead, he was chatting happily with Yi Chun, who he thought was dead. How could he not be furious? Yi Chun looked at Huang Fuyu calmly and said calmly, "Do you want to let go of the past with me?" He had changed. Su Qilin had changed. If Su Qilin was said to be an unparalleled genius of the sword sect in the past, then the current Huangfu Yu was like a sage who knew the truth and understood everything. This was the scariest part of it all, because no one knew whether it was a cold gaze or a pure heart that was as pure as Bodhi under his sincere smile. Let the grudges of the past go with the wind. Huangfu Yu met his gaze and smiled. Brother Yi, we both know each other very well. Moreover, Yuhan is in the middle of this. We really shouldn't be enemies. Why don't we work together to achieve the great Tao? His gaze and expression were so sincere that people couldn't help but want to believe and even accept him. Whatever. Yichen looked at him for a few seconds before saying, while smiling, I'll still say the same thing. As long as you don't provoke me, we'll be fine. Otherwise, I promise I won't leave any future trouble. Go. After he finished speaking, he immediately took a step forward and called out to Fang Ziyue as he walked towards the entrance of the desolate god's tomb. The latter was stunned for a few seconds before following, but her heart was filled with doubts. Meanwhile, Huangfu Yu stood where he was quietly. After watching Yi Chun enter, he said to the people behind him gently, Let's go in too. Wait. Right at that moment, a discordant voice rang out. Huangfu Yu looked over and saw Luo Xiu looking at him indifferently. He seemed to be provoking him. Huangfu Yu, you better pray that you don't meet me in the tomb. Otherwise, you, the genius of the Huangfu family, might die inside. At the end of his sentence, he suddenly grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. The depths of his gloomy eyes were filled with coldness. Hearing that, a young man from the Xinyuan 8 clans chuckled and said, Luo, do you think you're worthy of threatening Brother Yu? Brother Luo, don't worry. You won't die in my hands. Huangfu Yu raised his hand to signal the people behind him to be quiet. Then he smiled, because you're not worthy. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked out with his men. Meanwhile, Luo Xiu's expression turned completely grim. His eyes were practically spewing intense, killing intent. Yi and Huangfu Yu, just you wait. I'll let you know what regret is. Fang Qingwu's expression changed slightly as he said, Brother Luo, don't forget the purpose of our trip. The vast and boundless world was silent. A desolate aura filled the world, as if it had been sealed for countless years. Sizzle. However, this silence had been broken at some point in time. A huge crack had appeared in the void, and 2 figures rushed out from the crack. One of them felt as if her body was weightless, and she fell down at an extremely fast speed uncontrollably. Be careful. At that moment, a wide and powerful arm quickly grabbed her slender waist and carried her down steadily. In the end, they landed safely on the ground. Thank you. Fang Ziyue's face heated up subconsciously when she felt the strength coming from her waist. She bit her red lips and looked at Yi Chen gratefully. This space has always been a separate grotto heaven. Yi Chen looked at the vast space around him and said with a frown, The great desolation old man added many formations here before he died, causing the law of gravity here to be more than 50 times stronger than the outside world. 50 times? Fang Ziyue's eyes widened in disbelief when she heard that. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and said, Senior Yi, why are there so many people here? Why are there only the 2 of us here? It's simple. Yi Chen smiled lightly. It's because the teleportation formation at the entrance of the desolate god's tomb teleported everyone to different places in the tomb. However, the space in the tomb is limited, so we'll meet sooner or later. In other words, we might meet Luo Xiu and Huangfu Yu. Fang Ziyue thought of the crux of the problem in the blink of an eye. What she was most worried about was encountering Luo Xiu as soon as she entered. With the grudge between Luo Xiu and Yi Chen, coupled with Luo Xiu's vengeful personality, they would definitely fight. That makes sense. Yi Chen nodded and said, Can you tell me where we're going now? Fang Ziyue was stunned. A compass suddenly appeared in her hand. At that moment, there was a red dot jumping on the compass. She pointed at the red dot on the compass. Senior Yi, the thing I'm looking for is at this red, the northwest corner? Yi Chen squinted slightly and led Fang Ziyue to the red dot. At that moment, the trees around the two of them that were still like dead things suddenly shook violently. Then, beams of dark light shot out, directly tearing through space and attacking the two of them. P.S. Some chapters have been blocked recently. I'm working hard to edit them, so I can only update one chapter today. I'll update one more chapter tomorrow. End of this chapter. Chapter 1534. The beams of dark light were like tentacles that were as fast as lightning, catching them off guard. "Watch out!" Fang Ziyue exclaimed immediately. Yi Chun was neither fast nor slow. He used his fingers as a saber and advanced instead of retreating. He slashed at the terrifying light that was shooting at him. Whoosh, whoosh. Subsequently, the sound of metal colliding was heard, accompanied by sparks that shot out in all directions. The terrifying shockwave directly shattered the ground around them. When they looked again, the beams of dark light that shot out earlier had already fallen to the ground. They had lost their original luster and looked like withered branches. Fang Ziyue's expression changed slightly. "It's the branches that attacked us?" However, Yichen did not answer. He lifted his head and looked at the dense forest 300 meters away. His gaze was fixed on an ancient tree that seemed to have withered. He mocked. "So, there's a tree demon that has turned into a spirit here." As soon as he said that, rustle, 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 a strange sound rang out from the forest. Countless trees seemed to have come to life, and they retreated in unison. In the end, an ancient tree that seemed to be made of bronze was revealed. The ancient tree was dazzling, and it seemed to be wrapped in divine light. "It's the heavenly demon treasure tree." Yi Chen's eyes flickered slightly. The so-called heavenly demon treasure tree was a rare refining material in the cultivation world. Its tree core was most suitable to help cultivators calm down and nurture their souls. The heavenly demon treasure tree before him was equivalent to a perfected god transformation stage cultivator. Hiss! The heavenly demon treasure tree let out a hissing sound. Branches that blotted out the sky immediately whizzed toward Yi Chun. From afar, it looked like sword chi that tore through the air. An animal will always be an animal. Yi Chun scoffed and waved his hand. "Come, sword." Buzz. As the air trembled, there seemed to be lightning exploding in the air. Subsequently, a bolt of lightning that looked like a lightning dragon appeared in Yi Chen's hand. It was the true martial thousand lightning sword. Myriad sword return. In an instant, sword gleams that filled the sky exploded in Yi Chen's hand. The scene was like a huge golden umbrella that covered the entire space. Kacha kacha. Under the tens of thousands of sword lights, the branches of the heavenly demon treasure tree that covered the sky were all chopped off. Without exception, green blood splattered everywhere. Such powerful swordsmanship. Fang Ziyue's beautiful eyes were filled with splendor. I didn't expect Senior Yi to not only be a dual cultivator of Dharma and martial arts, but he's also proficient in the sword Dao. Swoosh! In the next moment, the heavenly demon treasure tree suddenly shook violently and quickly sank into the ground. Clearly, it realized that it was no match for Yi Chun and wanted to burrow into the ground. "Evil creature, you want to run away after acting tough?" Yi Chun scoffed and performed a hand seal. Earth-shattering seal. The heavenly devil treasure tree was horrified to find that the ground it was standing on had become incomparably hard, like steel. No matter what it did, it couldn't do anything. Swoosh! Yi Chen's figure flashed and appeared before it instantly. A sword gleam wrapped in lightning sliced through the air directly and slashed at the heart of the tree. The sword light easily pierced through the tree's body. Then, like a nuclear bomb exploding, it turned into endless energy that wreaked havoc in the tree's body. Boom! With a loud bang, the heavenly demon treasure tree turned into countless pieces that scattered everywhere. At the spot where it had collapsed, a green luster hovered in the air. The green luster was like a Bodhi heart. It gave off a captivating aura. It was as if one could enter a meditative state at any time under that aura. The heavenly demon treasure tree's heart. Fang Ziyue could not help but be elated when she saw that. Clearly, she had finally recognized what it was, and it seems to be a high-grade one. If this item were to be sold in the outside world, its value wouldn't be lower than a void refinement cultivation method. At that moment, a few air-piercing sounds shot over from afar. Subsequently, they landed before Yi Chun and the rest. There were 3 men in different attires. The leading old man had a beard and a terrifying scar on his face. One could tell that he was ruthless with just a glance. 2 of them were at the advanced stage God transformation stage, and one was at the perfect stage God transformation stage. Someone looked at the green luster in the air greedily. He gulped and said, "Brother, it's the heavenly demon treasure tree's heart." The bearded old man was drooling too. However, he turned his head to take a good look at Yi Chun and Fong Ziyue. A gleam flashed through his eyes when he saw Fong Ziyue. He said while smiling, "Oh, it's Miss Fong from the Tianyuan Trade Association. Who are you guys?" Fong Ziyue frowned slightly. "We're known as the Ghost Spirit Trio." The full-bearded old man chuckled. "However, with Miss Fong's status, you will definitely not have heard of the 3 of us. Miss Fong, on account of the Heavenly Yuan Merchant Association, leave immediately. We might show mercy. Are you guys robbing us of the Heavenly Demon Treasure Tree's heart?" Fong Ziyue laughed in anger. Fong Ziyue, was quite famous in the Yin ruins. Never had she thought that she would be robbed as soon as she entered. Otherwise, the bearded old man's eyes turned cold. "Are you trying to make things difficult for us, Miss Fong? Although you're a genius of the Fong family, don't forget that my cultivation level isn't lower than yours. Moreover, there are only 2 of you. Brother, why are you wasting your breath on her?" A middle-aged man next to him smirked. He looked at Fong Ziyue lecherously. "Why don't we capture the 2 of them together? We'll kill the man. As for Ms. Fong, why don't you help the 3 of us? This is the desolate god's tomb anyway. The Tianyuan Trade Association doesn't have the ability to spy on us. We'll just push the blame to other organizations when the time comes." The man gulped hard as he spoke to this point. Fong Ziyue's pretty face turned pale from anger. She had never been humiliated with such filthy words in the outside world before. Yi Chun said while smiling calmly, "What should we do? Kill him?" Fong Ziyue's eyes turned cold. "Sure." Yi Chun nodded lightly. Yi Chun slapped his hand out directly. The bearded old man did not expect Yi Chun to attack as soon as they met. He was going to attack in his rage. "How dare you, brat? You're really seeking death." Before he was done speaking, he turned into a bloody mist with a slap. Meanwhile, the other 2 were dumbstruck. Never had they thought that a perfected God transformation stage powerhouse would be killed with a slap just like that. "Senior, spare me. Spare me." One of them jolted and knelt hard before Yi Chun immediately. He was shaking like a sieve. He could kill a perfected God transformation stage powerhouse with a slap. Even if he was not on void refinement, he was close to it. He was horrified as he thought to this point. Meanwhile, the other person ran away without saying anything when he realized that the situation was not right. Puffed. In the blink of an eye, 2 bloody mists exploded in the air again. Yi Chun then grabbed the Heavenly Demon Treasure Tree's heart through the air. "Let's go." He turned his head to look at Fong Ziyue, who was dumbstruck. End of this chapter.